Well, the same attorney, funnily enough, total coincidence, basically asking, how can she stop John from leaving the state with the boys? The only way was to divorce and gain emergency custody. So Tanya eventually gets them all back to the house, saying, you know, if you want to enroll the kids down at school in Florida, right, you need paperwork, that kind of shit. You know, gotta cross the T's, dot the I's.
What the
This
fuck?
was simply a tactic, by the way, to buy time for her attorney and a police officer to arrive with the divorce papers so she could get emergency custody. The police officer was just there just to legalize it. So while they're all, you know, in the house, John's phone rings. It's the attorney he contacted, telling him he can't take John's case because he's already Tanya's attorney. This pisses him off, so he eventually storms out of the house with the two older boys, Andrew and Alexander. He ended up taking the two of them down to Florida, and they stay with a friend. And while down there, he was served with divorce papers. And because he brought the boys down to Florida, the judge was like, how about Tanya gets exclusive custody because you tried to run away with the kids. They eventually come back to Morenci, Michigan. Tanya decides to give John, her soon-to-be ex-husband, visitation rights. Because, you know, it would look good in the eyes of the judge. This would be a big mistake.
My god, n-am nimic în locul ăsta.
See, at some point over the course of 2010, John met 4 people. Joanne, Virgil, Sue, and Elijah. He said he met them at JD's truck stop in Niles, Michigan. They were known as the Underground Sanctuary. Whatever that means. Now why would he want to meet with people like this? Well, according to John, Tanya was sexually, emotionally, and verbally abusing the children. He said the children came to him one day and said, "Mommy was sexing us." Tanya had full custody of the children, so he said this was the only thing he could think of to save the boys, to get them away from her. And I do actually have to mention, Tanya was charged with 4th-degree sexual conduct back in 1998. She pled guilty to having sex with a 14-year-old boy. And she's on the sex offender list. So, a shitstorm's brewing, essentially, and this takes us to November 25th, 2010, Thanksgiving Day. The children were with John on visitation, back at their family home, celebrating Thanksgiving with their dad. Tanya and the children had moved to another house in Morenci, 4 blocks away from John's place. Neighbors saw the children play outside during the early afternoon. According to John, they had a lovely time together. He prepared the boys' favorite dish and even made a cake.
Thanks for answering the call,
Later on, John called Tanya asking a lot of questions. Most importantly, if they would be able to fix their marriage. To which Tanya answered, I don't know.
This water source is irreplaceable.
They were going through marriage counseling after what happened back in September. But Tanya was only doing it She couldn't trust John anymore, couldn't trust him to not run away with the kids. So the next day, Black Friday, John was supposed to give the kids back to Tanya at 3 p.m. However, this time Tanya wanted the kids back a little bit earlier than the usual, scheduled end of visitation time, 3 p.m. Because a week before, John had told the kids that their mother was in prison. Now, it was true, she had before that sexual conduct. Let's move past it. She was pissed about this. She obviously didn't want the kids to know about that. So, Tanya called John to get him to bring the kids back to her house earlier than was agreed. However, John told Tanya that the children weren't with him. They were with a woman named Joanne Taylor. And he tells Tanya that this mystery Joanne we got the kids back at about 3 p.m. Then, a little bit later, he called Tanya and said he wasn't home. He was in hospital in Toledo, Ohio, about an hour away from Morenci, Michigan. He was in hospital because he tried to hang himself, failed, and as he fell, he broke his leg. So, as you can imagine, Tanya is kind of a... you know, he tells her their kids are with some mystery woman. Next, he says he tried to kill himself. Right. Tanya then called the police. The police walk up to the hospital and speak with John. Where the shit are the kids? And so, yeah, John told me, yeah, they're grand, they're with Joanne, some mystery person from And so an amber alert was put out for the
We have
missing
secured four
skeleton
sectors
brothers.
that are enemy. Ensure you defend them.
Dei dracu stau acolo.
Frantic search in the town of Lorenzo. The father, 39-year-old John Skelton, claims he gave them to a woman he met over the internet. He gave the name Joanne Taylor.
At this point, we've not been able to locate a Joanne Taylor
Whoa!
or confirm.
Take a sector echo.
Stai, oprește-te.
Family and investigators left with puzzling questions.
Why did they not?
Stai, bă, sunt sfumat. Prietene.
Kathy Herrera, spokesperson for the mother Tanya Skelton,
Dai, mai pe ei,
seen here
să
with her
facă.
boys, 9-year-old Andrew, 7-year-old Alexander, and 5-year-old Tanner.
Aici
The
la
separated couple spent Thanksgiving together with the boys. John Skelton rushed to an Ohio hospital Friday afternoon after a failed suicide attempt.
Sector Alpha has been taken by the enemy.
They get a warrant to search John's house. The place was in bits. Plates shattered, covering the ground.
Am putea una tankul ăla imediat.
A scary sight to see in general, let alone in the current circumstances of
Pedra.
three missing boys. They see his computer. His last Facebook
Bă, dar cât
post
poți să tragi pe mine, bă?
Thanksgiving Day said, "May God and Tanya forgive them."
Lasă-mă dracu, faci.
Also, they found some disturbing internet research history about rat poison being able to kill humans and breaking necks through the hand. Yeah,
ce
you
turela
know,
aia
it's
care
Thanksgiving, so
Complaining about that crap on the internet, how to reconnect and stuff like that. Yeah, my son and I were watching a lot of video of that. Looked him up online.
Enemy forces control sector echo.
the FBI then got involved. Search parties went out on the fields and streets. And it was revealed that on the day the boys disappeared, John's minivan was driven just 40 minutes away.
Uite dracu,
Holiday City.
frică de tankul ăla, pute una mă moară.
50 people living
Așa, direct.
He was trapped via his cell phone data, and he was in the area for about 76 minutes on that very
Repara, frate.
morning on Black Friday, after he celebrated a happy Thanksgiving with his three boys.
The search for three little boys continues into Tuesday. Searchers covering a huge area, looking at a local river which sits just to the south and to the west of Lorenzo. Volunteers continue to fan out underbrush, whatever it is, hoping to find anything.
It's just so heartbreaking to not know where those kids are.
That's the days go by. So back to you.
You just keep going. It's just our goal.
What
Păi
he
nu
did
mă ajunge
there,
tankul numai dacă sunt în poziția asta, că nu pot să urc centura ăla.
and that's it. More than 500 people looked for the boys, covering an 80 square mile area. But when a TV station carried out the false story of the boys being found behind an inn in Holiday City, the search lost momentum.
Tanya Skelton first reported her three boys missing from their home in Michigan.
What words are there to describe something like this? This is just...
We have found absolutely nothing consistent with this case at all, but that doesn't say we're not going to keep searching.
Bă, când repară ăștia tankul, frate, trag toate rachetele în el.
Lynn Thompson is a reporter for the Broadway Times. He covered the case since day one, and he actually recently released a book called 76 Minutes about the case. During his own investigation, he was led to an abandoned county road outside Holiday City near Lazy River Campground. He says volunteers owned the campground, but no one made it to the specific area he believes is a leader. A little trail with a tree and fork, an area that is prone to flooding. Now, the river has been sonar scanned, but unfortunately, the science is really hard to map, and even those who've done it hundreds of times and are successful at searches and recoveries might not see what's there. He believes that the river and that area hold some clues as to the missing brothers.
They're doing their best to make this
Now,
call.
John Skelton was arrested in early December, less than a week after the kids' disappearance. As soon as he was released from hospital, he had to appear in court for a hearing, charged with 3 counts of kidnapping and 3 counts of unlawful he appeared in a wheelchair, wearing a soft cast only. Though if he had a broken foot on suicide, he should have been wearing a hard cast. Supposedly, he broke his foot when he failed and hanged himself from a banister leading to the basement. He felt the ground. The fall was around 10 feet high. Doctors say it's not likely to only suffer a hairline fracture from a fall that high. He would have suffered a displacement fracture. There was probably no suicide attempt, and so a theory was formed as to how he actually
Our forces have taken more sectors than the enemy.
Injury of that sort occurs when twisting your ankle. For example, walking on uneven terrain. Or how about walking on uneven terrain in the early morning darkness on Black Friday while carrying the bodies of your sons?
Oh, okay. Bye. Second much does good.
Since that time, still made statements.
Our forces just secured the stealth. Every sector is under our
Couple
control.
that with it's exciting for the boys. Also, grow. Investigative task force.
Just lost sector charge to hostiles.
Assessment of where we're at. My point of making this a public statement.
The enemy is moving on Delta 1.
I saw the also grow. My concerns is putting up people not focused on possibility for the board job. As long as we're back in the fields, and we're back in the possibilities are out there.
So, authorities had questions for John
Kuulaan
about
näet
this
sinne traffic
underground
jobs.
sanctuary that he claims still exists. Have the boys to this day. John says that the group probably belongs to the army. There is quite a few
Avionics.
communities in Michigan and the surrounding states. John allegedly gave the group his home address so they could meet the boys and start the handing over procedure. He says, the Thanksgiving sleepover was, kind of like a test run of how the three boys would act with their new caretakers to see if they would, fit in together. And it must have been, well, we never saw them again, allegedly. They took them off. So remember the police tracked John's phone in the very early hours of the day after Thanksgiving at around 4:29 a.m. close to the Ohio border. Then it came at 5 a.m. near Holiday City. So, initially investigators thought that the boys were in Holiday City, and it was an important place to John. It's a truck stop, 25 minutes from where he lives. The family used to go camping around the Holiday City area. They've had many happy memories there. His phone was pinged again at 6:46 a.m. back up John says he never went to Holiday City that morning. He says that people, who were in his house Thanksgiving night who took the boys this underground sanctuary. They were driving off with the boys. He wasn't there. His phone was just accidentally left in the van, and then they dropped the van back, and then they took off. So John is still adamant to this very day, 10 years later, that he gave his children to this group. However, many others feel that he did something horrible, that he's full of shit, and that in the early morning hours after him and his three boys happily celebrated Thanksgiving, he drove them out in his van towards Holiday City, towards that wilderness area, did something just awful, twisted his ankle, in the woods. That's it. John's skeleton was ultimately sentenced to 10 to 15 years in prison in connection with the disappearance of his three young sons. Lieutenant Jeremy Brewer took over the investigation 3 years after it happened. As the lead investigator, he
Hostile vehicle beside you!
in prison, hoping that one day he's gonna tell the truth. Brewer said John probably did something pretty horrible. everything carried out by John was some kind of act of revenge against Tanya. He was scared. He had previously lost custody of his daughter from, a previous marriage. And it looked like he might be close to losing his son too. John told the investigators that they will hibernate until they graduate, and then, this underground sanctuary will release them back into the city. I think it's probably more likely the kids will hibernate longer than that. He says he wrapped each of them in a blanket, gave them a stuffed animal, and they drove away with his 3 people. John would later say during a prison interview that at 10 o'clock on Thanksgiving night, the underground people came and picked up the boys. He told the boys they were off to live on a farm with another family. Not for a long time, just a while. He said that the boys were taken to the Ohio-Indiana border, were farmed by these people.
John Skelton once again insisted his
Sector Alpha just fell to the enemy.
Skelton's call to us came as his in-laws met with Action News earlier this week and said they do not expect a joyous reunion. What reason should people have to believe? What evidence have you given that the boys were alive?
Go walk.
Skelton says he gave his sons, only 5, 7, and 9 years old, to an organization to protect them from his estranged wife, Tanya. Police have not accused her of any wrongdoing. Skelton now says he has doubts about the alleged love he gave his kids to.
He also claimed he was given photographs and a name by these people, and John simply had to contact this guy to get his boys back. Well, it turned out that the name he was given was Mose Gingrich, a TV personality who came from an Amish background. Mose did a program that aired in April 2012, spotlighting his efforts to help former followers of the faith. Now, John Skelton only came up with Mose Gingrich's name after he was broadcast in the TV show Gingrich about Amish people, whatever. So that's interesting. He happened. Oh, jeez. That's the guy, yeah. Mose was contacted by Lieutenant Brewer after John saying Mose is the man to contact, the man who is in charge of the underground sanctuary. And, well, obviously, Mose didn't know what he was on about. He thinks John came up with his name and needed validity to his story. So while John is maybe probably definitely making the story up as it goes along, his family, John's family, his dad, John Sr., his mother Roxanne, his sister Lucinda, they believe him. They think, he would never hurt the boys, and he's telling the truth. They also have no faith in the police over in Michigan. They say that John actually went to the police before all this happened to report the alleged enemy vehicles done by Tanya. Remember how he said the kids told him mom was sexing us? There is no paperwork at the police station in Morenci to confirm any of it. John's family say the police ignored any of the claims coming from their son, that John was trying to save the children by giving them away. His mother, Roxanne, agrees though that what John did was irresponsible and stupid, but she still believes her son. She knows how much he loved him and would never hurt him.
Right. It does. It does. I'm not gonna deny it.
Well, I thought about that. I questioned that too. Why hasn't them boys? Did anybody ever think?
Ahead of us!
There's no way you can hide children. Well, I pulled up 186 cases of underground children.
His dad says that one day while in his store down all the way in Jacksonville, he was working late and was back to the store. And some mystery man came up behind him and told him, John Sr., don't turn around, but your grandkids are sick. And then he
that breaks the skeleton case wide open. Tonight,
Okay.
back into the
Okay.
crews found thousands of miles of grave. The human remains found in a small Montana town focused back on the skeleton case years after their disappearance.
In September 2017, a cleaning crew in Missoula, Montana, found human remains in a box inside a shed. They were the remains of three boys of matching ages to the skeleton brothers. However, analysis concluded that these samples were over 99 years old. The police still get tips about the case. In May 2019, a tipster claimed she spotted a man in a vehicle at an Ohio pond due south of Morenci back on Thanksgiving Day. The man matched
Wow,
John
ce
Skelton's
țin,
description.
dai, bro.
Authorities viewed the tip as credible,
Cu
saying that
ricoile
the
de
tipster's
acolo,
information
du-te,
aligned
dracu.
with what the detectives already knew about the case.
Oh my
They
god,
searched
ce-am
the body of
întunat.
water and surrounding woods in search of clues. However, to
Fuck
date,
level
no
armor.
discoveries have been reported. So the questions, the multiple questions about this case still remain. Are the boys alive? Are they happy? Are they safe? Does this underground sanctuary of people really exist? Doubt it. Well, I don't know. Well, final question. Did John Skelton murder his children? John hasn't been charged with murder. He's just charged with kidnapping, as there's no hard evidence as to what happened to the three boys. John Skelton is now 48 years old and is tentatively scheduled for a parole hearing in the week of July 27th, 2020. The Department of Corrections said the earliest John Skelton could be released was November 29th, 2020. The maximum discharge date would be November 29th, 2025.
What evidence have you given that the boys are alive?
You think that, after so many years have passed, it's been 10. If he truly did do something awful to his three boys, he would have, the guilt, because everybody says, like, they don't doubt that he loved them, right? So you think the guilt would just be tearing him apart, and maybe he would have said something by now, come clean, at the very least, about what really happened. Tanya doesn't question that he loved their children, but he thinks that John got scared of losing the boys, and he did something terrible. If Alexander and Hannah are still alive, this is how they would look today.
If we don't stop them, they'll take every sector.
We might never know what actually happened to the Skelton brothers, but people haven't given up hope that they will be found someday. Hopefully someday soon. And finally, thank you so much for watching again. I really appreciate it. I will see you as always real soon in the next video. Take care of
My
yourselves.
ass.
Mike out.
Trouble at the marker!
Au choppa.
Careful at the marker!
Fac niște levele. Da, așa se iau aici, erau.
Danger here!
Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this little video, we're going to have a look at the story of Charles Erickson and what happened in good old Missouri. This tale goes like this.
Ever had a dream that you had you could do so you want him to do.
This is about dreams, people, and the ability to separate fact from fiction. And what happens if you place yourself somewhere you never were, and the police take your imaginings as proof. Let's get into it. On Halloween night in the year 2001, in the city of Columbia, Missouri, friends Charles Erickson and Ron Ferguson were out Halloween partying. They were both 17 years old at the time, and partying pretty darn hard. Rock on. Holy sure, you gotta look after it. At this house party, there was alcohol, and well, more than just alcohol. It eventually got to the point where the police had to come in and break up this underage shindig. After the, oh shit, it's the cops! Charles hitched a ride with buddy Ryan Ferguson to downtown Columbia, and they went to a bar called Firewood. They knew the
Allied
bouncer
forces have taken
and
Sector
kept
Bravo.
partying. However, just a couple of blocks away, and I'm going to sound really cliche and like overdramatic, but something would happen that would change both their lives forever. It's true this time when I say that cliche.
They're attacking one of our objectives. Beat the Russians if we can just
48-year-old
maintain
Columbia
control.
Daily Tribune sports editor Kent
Tap the
Piper
reserves. This
was
is their last
leaving the
shot.
office of the paper shortly after 2 a.m. on the 1st of
Keep
November.
it that way.
As he was in the parking lot on the way to his car, he was struck from behind, brutally beaten and strangled with his own thumb. The last person to speak to Kent before what happened was a fellow employee at the paper, Michael Boyd, who had talked in minutes before he was killed. Minutes after Kent's attack, a janitor who was out having a smoke break named Shauna Ornt saw what she described as shadowy figures near Kent's car. Thinking this was, well, weird. It's Halloween, it's the middle of the night, they're probably up to no good, and she was right. She went and got her supervisor, Jerry Trump. He arrived, and Jerry and Shauna saw two college-aged men, and one of them apparently said to Jerry and Shauna, "Someone's heard of them." They then walked away, and Kent.
911 for the emergency.
We need someone here at the Columbia Daily Tribune.
What's going on?
I'm not sure. I've been told call 911. Somebody heard outside.
Is there anybody who can tell me what's going on there?
We need to hear.
Our enemy just took Sector Bravo.
You're in the 101 4th Street.
We are hitting Bravo 1.
What's going on? It's a parking lot behind Kentucky Fried Chicken used to be. The sports editor here. Laying in the ground. Pool of blood. There were two boys out there.
They're
Two young
falling back.
guys just a
Good
minute
work,
ago.
no patch. You want allies back home.
At the scene of the crime, the police discovered unidentified fingerprints, hair,
Capture
footprints, and from the witnesses, mainly Shauna, they developed a sketch of one of the suspects. But what happened to Kent and the case would remain cold for quite a long time.
A to se capture helikopter boss. Trebuie să stai pe punct.
The morning after the death of Kent Heithold, Charles woke up.
jump on me.
Ah, Jesus, lads, me head. I'm dying. Rough one last night. Can't remember.
Poți să te
That
bată pe
happened.
2042.
I don't know why he's from Dublin, but although
E
Charles couldn't remember anything that happened the night before, over time he thought that he might remember a few things. 2 years later, an article came out about the unsolved murder of Kent Heithold by the Columbia Daily Tribune, still unsolved by 2003. Charles Erickson read the article and started to become concerned. He couldn't remember anything of that night. He knew he was in the area, he was around that area in the middle of downtown Columbia, and when he saw this sketch, he thought, holy shit, that looks like me. Did he black out and do something horrific? That night he had been drinking, but also taking Adderall and cocaine. Mixing all that stuff, it's a bad idea, like real bad idea, but more so for your own body. But Charles was worried that, you know, blacking out and all those chemicals in his body might have caused him to do something bad. Again, this was 2 years ago from this time, so everything was pretty hazy. But these things would cause Charles to obsess and get so paranoid about what happened to Kent and what Charles could possibly have done that night. In January 2004, Charles spoke to the person he was with that night, his friend Ryan Ferguson, fearing that maybe they were both involved and that he might be repressing memories of what happened. However, Ryan was adamant that they had nothing to do with it. See, Ryan, he remembered everything that happened that night. He was driving, like, fairly on a few drinks, but he wasn't too bad. And he also had proof of, you know, where he was. And he knew they were both at home. But that wouldn't matter when we get into what we're going to get into. Charles
Priority
then
intel has
had
come out of a supposedly
a
abandoned
dream
facility
in which
in
he and
Czechia.
Ryan were involved
Eastern
and
forces have been using the
responsible
tracks
for
to
the
follow
death
heavy armor
of
to the
Kent
front line.
Heithold.
But someone screwed
And
up.
he began telling friends
A
about
wayward
this
signal gave us
dream,
exact
which was a big
coordinates.
mistake.
We're gonna hit that place
One
hard
of the people
and fast.
Charles told this to would
Clear
eventually
them out of there,
call
no
Crime
pass.
Stoppers,
Any surplus
leading
armor on the
police to
ground
both
is yours.
Charles and
Command
Ryan.
out.
Police took their fingerprints as they had ones from the scene of the crime. However, they were both ruled out.
Really
No
fun.
match.
This is really fun. I had no idea.
Paranoia. beers and discuss his dream with friends.
Dopo giocavo in fanteria. Pure me giocavo War Thunder per stare. My friend
This
War
when
Thunder.
shit hits the fan.
Much better.
On March 10th,
But we keep it risolvato.
dream becomes reality. Now in the police force, like in most professions, you got your good apples and your bad apples.
They tell.
In police, you know, the few bad apples tend to
Sector
kind of
echo in
spoil
enemy hands.
reputation a lot, you know, and you know, there's a lot of great police officers out there, and a lot of ones who want to do the right thing. This guy was not one of those.
Start off by just telling you a little bit about what happened.
Ascoltami, ma criminale.
You know, the officers, they've gone to the city and they've gotten in touch with Ryan. And make a long story short, Ryan is saying, I don't know anything, wasn't there, I don't know what Chuck's talking about, it's crazy. You know, it happened down the way he said, he obviously did it himself.
Straordinaria, per sicuro. Frica dei full air, no anche aereo.
Now under enemy control. Allied targeting Charlie 2. Well, base defeated. I think you like this. You need to secure more sectors.
Fuck.
Pretty much Ryan's story.
Ora è speciale anche aereo, speciale pentru mine am dedicat. Ăștia cu drona.
Well, hey, I was there. I didn't know anything like that. First thing I know, Jeff's over there. That's awesome. So you never know what form of the sports can take.
De loc cum mi-aș aplică cât significă de recover pe instant.
Now remember, the only thing Charles knows about the case is what he read in the newspaper, the facts that were publicly available, and the dream.
Well, now, let me go back to this. I don't know exactly because now like Detective Short told you, I don't think you and I have gone there. There's specifics about this whole thing. Right.
No,
bottom line. So, my view is, I need to know as much information about what Ryan said, what Ryan thinks. Okay, well, let's start. You start here at the club, right? And my understanding is, I'm just going to try to briefly.
Te ecco. Tragetta. Yeah.
You must return to the combat area. We control more sectors than the enemy, but this battle is far from over. The situation. Sector Delta has been secured.
Got the train già
Timetables off. We need to secure more territory.
That, like I said, that you would only know if you were there. That's one. Well, know about what this said back here that I, you explain. I'm not going to go there.
Like, I wouldn't.
are attacking Alpha 1.
Let's stop right
The enemy has secured Sector Echo.
now. One thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to sit here and listen to this kind of weird thing. That's not, I'm not listening. No. Wait. I'm going to start talking. And you start listening. Okay? Alright. Point blank. Right now, you're behind me and you're going to see over the head. Ryan, care less about it. Okay? Do you understand me? Okay. Now, look you better start thinking very clearly. Because it's you that is on this choppa.
Attack on Alpha 1.
Am I clear? Now, we need to go back do this step by step. And I don't want to hear no, what I want to hear is exactly what Ryan told you, because that's what's going to keep you in a position where you're not going to be the sole individual out there responsible for what
We
happens.
now hold Sector Alpha.
Okay?
Almost every sector
You
is
know
under our
here.
control. Keep it that way.
You need to understand. I need to know what you're actually doing. But I need to know Ryan.
When he describes the weather, he's not even describing it the right way. He was using his hands to show how Kent was strangled. Kent was strangled with his own belt.
The weaker than when they started. Keep hitting them. Echo objective secure. Sector under control. Taking every sector. Can't find one. Now control Sector Delta.
At one point, the police officer Charles where it happened, because he doesn't know where it happened.
Now, can you tell me exactly where this happened? Yeah. Looking at this area, is this something there?
Charles Erickson and Ron Ferguson were then arrested for murder. Leading up to the trial, this was, no matter the facts, a slam dunk for the prosecution. Because they manipulated the facts, Jerry Trump, one of the witnesses, who
Io
on
mi
that
multa
night,
con la
not
scritta
identified
che
in
mi
the
parla
suspect
bene.
square, was suddenly able to identify Ryan and Charles. He said that while he was in prison on an unrelated charge after the death of Kent, his wife sent him a newspaper article with pictures of both Ryan and Charles. He was able to identify them as the people he saw that night. His wife would later say she never sent him anything like this in prison. Sean Mort, the other witness, was also never able to identify Ryan and Charles. While Charles was in custody, prosecutor Kevin framed
Taking fire!
Charles, saying Ryan Ferguson was going to take a plea deal and screw Charles over into a longer sentence or even possibly the death penalty. Feeling the heat and, well, after that shitty interrogation, Charles took a plea bargain and was given a 25-year sentence for second-degree murder, returned for his testimony in relating Ryan Ferguson. Ryan was never going to testify against Charles. As I said, he knew exactly what happened that night and he knew what they didn't do. But Charles, well rehearsed by the time it came to take the stand, crucified himself. Now, they both couldn't have done it. There's no need to go over that spoon-fed interrogation again, but there's many other things that point to their innocence. Yes. No DNA, fingerprints, any evidence suggests that they were responsible. Ryan's car was searched. Both their homes were searched. No blood, no DNA. After a violent crime, no nothing. And hair not belonging to him was found at the crime scene. Didn't match either Ryan or Charles. The shoe prints found, the size didn't match. Witnesses never saw them. Ryan and Charles left the bar with By George shortly after 1 a.m. The bar closes at 1:30 a.m. Ryan called his sister from the parking lot of the By George at 1:18 a.m. This call has been verified through cell phone records. He then drove Charles home, which was about a 10-minute drive from the bar. After that, Ryan drove himself home. Once he arrived home, he made a few calls on his cell phone again. These calls, again verified, started at 1:41 a.m. and ended with his last call at 2:09 a.m. Ryan then went to bed. Kent was killed at 2:20 a.m. The prosecution withheld a lot of information from the defense, which are Brady violations, but it didn't matter. Ryan Ferguson was sentenced to 40 years in prison, Charles, 25 years. In 2009, Kathleen Zellner, who you might remember from the Steve Mabry case of Parliament, took over Ryan Ferguson's case. In 2009, she interviewed Charles Harrison. I'll let him speak for himself.
My name is Kathleen Zellner, and I represent Ryan Ferguson. Can I call you Chuck?
Mr.
Okay. Well, Mr. Erickson, I'm going to hand you what we marked as Exhibit 1 of your sworn statement. Ask you if you can identify this document.
This is some notes that I've written regarding prison for.
Would you read slowly what you've written into the record?
I made a lot of assumptions and facts to satisfy the police. When I did that, I used the opportunity to move the blame onto Ryan and the knowledge myself. Things happened much differently than I had previously stated. When we left the club, I cannot honestly remember if we had robbery on our minds. I made up the statement about Ryan getting his tire iron.
Stop them!
Mike hit myself about it. I imagine that it might have occurred that way because I thought I beat the victim with the tire iron. I did not accept in my conscious mind that I was the sole perpetrator and aggressor, so I put a lot of the blame on Ryan. I don't think that much of it was even consciously done. It was just too hard to admit to myself knowing that I killed him. I cannot even accept the possibility of it. We had never done robberies before. We never did them after. We did a lot of stuff, which was probably what we had in mind. I believe that I flipped out and committed the entire act with a full gun. I remember feeling psychotic and giddy. That's understandable. I did not tell Ryan what it was due. He had no idea that I would act in such aggressive manner. I don't remember how much of it he was there for. He could not stop me. He could not stop me, though he tried again. If he had wanted to stop me before and during much of the act, I was prepared for it. I strangled Ken Idol to death. I did not remember this until the police told me what he was strangled with. When I said that's fucked up, after they told me what he was strangled with, I just remembered. I then did not remember. I lied right there. That was the first blatant lie. It was then that I knew I had done it.
He recanted the testimony against Ryan and placed the blame solely on his own shoulders. However, as you can see, he still believes the police that he himself is guilty.
That's it.
Let me ask you just a couple of follow-up questions. So, are you saying today that you are the sole murderer of Kent Piper?
They're losing resources fast. Projected enemy strength now at 50%.
In 2012, 7 years since Ryan and Charles sent away, Jerry Trump, key witness, also recanted his testimony.
Right, it was Jerry Trump who testified that he's the man in 2005 in that trial who said he saw Ferguson actually have the crime. Now, if you're going to know whether Ferguson deserves a retrial, he's changing his story, saying open stories that nobody has ever heard.
When you reach Brian Ferguson's courtroom, he says that's the person you saw walking through the parking lot. Was that
Jerry Trump's tears tell the story. Do you anticipate or want anything for doing this?
Sector Alpha secure.
Forgiveness for telling a jury in 2005 he recognized Ferguson from the murder scene because of pictures he'd seen in a newspaper. Lie, he says now, it helped put Ferguson in prison for 40 years. He says one man is responsible for the fake story about the newspaper pictures.
Did you make that up? No.
Someone else did. Kevin Crane.
Crane's the prosecutor from the 2005 trial, but the Attorney General's office isn't buying Trump's recantation.
So, both key witnesses, Jerry and Charles, took to the stand and testified under oath that they had deliberately lied at trial in order to benefit the prosecutor. They both said what I said, many years ago. However, Ryan Ferguson's request for a new trial was denied, as the judge said both Jerry Trump and Charles Ferguson's testimonies were not credible. Yes, Kevin Crane, the prosecutor from, when they were originally sent away, had a lot of friends.
Charlie 2 is under attack.
Kathleen Zellner appealed, and on November 5th, 2013, Ryan's conviction was overturned. Ryan Ferguson became remanded. He later filed a civil suit against 11 individuals, the county and the city. He won and was awarded $11 million.
Today, what do you say?
Pushing forward, then Echo 1.
I don't remember going home. Okay.
And you feel
Just seen Sector Bravo.
Why is that?
Because there are other people running there. That to me was the most like.
So in that round, you said it was just me.
In 2009, I said that.
And so then that was what was used
Well, I said that basically because I still honestly thought we did it. I didn't know people were chances. I thought that was really on the way I can help my getting back to the service at the scene.
Why did you feel that?
Because I lied. Carlos, come here. I lied. You know, I lied, and I lied, and I put, Ryan prison for the rest of his life, basically.
Initiated by our
And I didn't, I knew I didn't remember. Let me tell you, still thought that I did it, but it was really hard. It was really, first it was hard. It was hard not to, because I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in prison.
Was there anything in it for you?
No, actually, like, I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life in prison because, according to my plea agreement, you can look it up, but if I ever acknowledged, if I ever said, oh, I lied in court, then they could take my plea agreement. Wow.
So why should people believe you now?
Yeah, I know, yeah, okay.
A hostile set secure sector echo.
Brian Ferguson has vowed to Charles. He knows Charles Vincent, which is pretty nice of Brian, seeing as how he killed Charles, trying to separate prison from nearly a decade. And if Brian is innocent, doesn't that mean also by association that Charles should be innocent too?
Ferguson maintains that neither of them killed Piper and that the killer is still out there.
Absolutely. I believe, he did it. It's a matter of proving it and it's a matter of giving him help.
Taking control of Sector Bravo.
Facts clearly he did it. But anyone who's taking time to look at the evidence,
return to the engagement immediately.
Now, like Brian, I'm not one of but you see one in the middle of the choice. But maybe there was someone that night who wasn't properly investigated. Maybe it was the last person to see Kent Pipold alive. Maybe someone changed their story. Maybe they're worth looking into. Again, not saying he did anything, just maybe he's worth a closer look. This is from Brian Ferguson's civil suit after his release from prison. Quote, the failure to investigate Michael Boyd. Disturbingly, the defendant officers failed to investigate the prime suspect in the murder of Kent Pipold, Michael Boyd. At the time of Pipold's murder, Boyd was a sports writer for the Tribune. Pipold was Boyd's supervisor. Boyd is the last known person alive and has consistently placed himself at the scene of the murder when police. Items found at the scene link Boyd to the murder scene. Numerous papers were found around and under Pipold's arm. These papers include a Hickman High School girls basketball schedule and a number of Columbia College basketball programs and schedules. Boyd covered high school basketball. Pipold did not cover such events. Boyd frequently took paperwork home, including team schedules. On the night of the murder, Pipold was only carrying his laptop bag and had no loose papers in his hand. Despite his obvious significance to the investigation, Boyd was only interviewed twice by members of the Columbia Police Department. Boyd gave defendants and two police officers blind pursuing George and Simon's conflicting information. Given that Boyd's papers were discovered at the crime scene, given that he was the last known person to see Pipold alive, and given that he gave inconsistent information to the defendant officers about his actions that night, the defendant officers should have conducted an investigation into Boyd and his suspect. They did not do so, and as a result, failed to obtain additional information. The defendant officers never learned that Boyd had a dispute with Pipold shortly before the murder regarding a major mistake he had made on an assignment from Pipold. Boyd also did not fill out a timesheet indicating when he left the Tribune the night of the murder, even though he was required to do so. So, that's a lot on him. But, solved or unsolved? Well, I'm leaning towards the unsolved direction. I think that's everything we've seen, but I'd like to hear what you get. In May 2019, a petition of habeas corpus, a legal right to determine whether it is lawful or not, on behalf while Charles Erickson was denied. This is a real tragic case of manipulation. You know, especially on Charles Erickson, who's easily manipulated by the police. And then, you know, you got Ryan Ferguson, who's innocent throughout, and he lost almost definitely of his life. And then Charles Erickson, who's still in prison, losing even more. If he is innocent, which personally I'm waiting for. One thing's for certain, there's a lot of frustrating things in this case, but that interrogation is one of the most frustrating things I've ever seen, where he was trying to ram into saying things that were blatantly untrue. As always, let me know your thoughts on this case. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I will see you, as always, real soon in the next one. Take care of yourselves.
Return to the fight!
Hey, you, my name is Mike, and in this old video, we're going to Canada. Holy smokes, I hear you say. I know, we never go there. So today, we're going to have a little chinwag. Christopher,
Enemy vehicle!
Christopher Garnier. Oh, okay, Grant. Yeah, Christopher Champeu. This occurred in September 2015 in Truro, Nova Scotia, when police officer Catherine Campbell disappeared. And wouldn't you know it, the last person to see Catherine would be Christopher Garnier. This case is a little bit infuriating, a little bit odd, and I don't know whether adjectives to use, so let's get into it. Catherine Campbell was born in January 1979 in Nova Scotia. She was the middle of 3 children growing up in the small town of Stellarton. Catherine, from a young age, just wanted to help people, you know, serve her community. And, like her father, would go on to be a volunteer firefighter. Following this, she went on to become a police officer, eventually reaching the rank of constable in the Truro Police Department after 6 years there. She would commute from her apartment in Dartmouth to Truro every day, fed miles per hour. And Catherine Campbell went missing on Thursday, the 10th of September 2015.
Doing good so far. The hostiles hold your sectors to the weekend.
Year-old Catherine was reported missing the following Monday when she never showed up for her shift. The dispatch supervisor with the Truro Police Department was the one to raise the alarm, as she was a co-worker and quite a good friend of Catherine's. And you know, Catherine Campbell was the type of person she would always phone in if something was going on. You know, she was going to be late. She was, you know, she was kind of reliable in that way. So with her being a no-show, the dispatch supervisor requested the Halifax Regional Police Department to do a welfare check on her in her Dartmouth department. You know, Dartmouth is just across the river from Halifax. So with a clickety-clack, knock on their door, no sign of Catherine. They entered. There was no sign of a servant or anything like that, but the purse was gone, the phone was gone. Their usual, you know, day-to-day bits and bobs were gone. However, they did find surveillance footage of her leaving the apartment a few days previous, but that was that she never did.
Morning,
let's make a
Secured sector Delta.
Superintendent Jim Carroll, Johnson, in charge of the investigation. Here tonight speaking on the
The hostiles control more sectors than we do. Counterattack immediately.
This file evolved very quickly. Yesterday afternoon.
Every sector has fallen.
However, it would be just a short couple of days later that Catherine's body would be found in Halifax, just across the bridge from Dartmouth. Catherine's body was found on the 15th of September. She was found near an overpass under a large wooden box. Inside a garbage bin nearby, they found her keys.
Today.
And just over an hour after Catherine's body was found, a man was arrested while driving his car. 27-year-old Christopher Shampoo. Inside his car, the police found a tarp, rope, a blanket, and a 5-liter gas can that was half full. Also a backpack containing sandals, a long-sleeve hoodie, 3 t-shirts, pants, sandals, 6 pairs of underwear, toiletries, his passport, a deck of cards, and 2 boxes of Ciprolex, which is a medication used for depression. Now there are a lot of things, you know, you could do with all that shit found inside Christopher Garnier's car. But 2 of them are burning a body and making a run for it. He was also found to be driving towards where Catherine's body was found. So, what led to this? I hear you barking, big dog. I'll take you through it. So to determine that, we have to go back to the night of September 10th and to the early hours of September the 11th. Shortly after midnight on September 11th, Catherine left her Dartmouth apartment complex, got in a taxi to the Halifax Ale House, which, honestly, it looks pretty fun. Now, the taxi driver who brought her there would later say to the police, you know, she didn't seem drunk, she seemed fine, she was in grand form. Guess she was just dying for a few sups. Aren't we all? While at the Halifax Ale House, it seems she ran into Christopher Garnier, a former paramedic. They were noticed by a number of people there. Noticed because they were practically banging, according to witnesses. Christopher getting a chubby on the dance floor. Christopher actually used to work as a bouncer at the Halifax Ale House and had, earlier that day, told a friend who was working there that he had just broken up with his girlfriend, so was presumably on the rebound.
You might know him, but don't
They were smooching away, getting blitzed. I hope they weren't drinking mooseheads. Right before leaving together, shortly after 3 a.m. The pair of them got in a taxi now back to Christopher's friend's place, a fella by the name of Mitchell DeVoe. See, Christopher was staying with Mitchell because, well, he just broke up with his girlfriend. He got and now this taxi driver would also later say to the police he didn't know their name. He couldn't hear what they were yapping about, but he did feel some kind of tension between them. And after they entered that apartment, well, no one other than Catherine Christopher were there. So we have to piece together what we think happened. It wasn't good. By the way, the guy who lived in that apartment, Mitchell DeVoe, he wasn't there that night. He had actually been out on beer himself, but in a different pub until the next morning. So, what we do know is that at about 4:45 a.m., so maybe an hour after Christopher and Catherine were seen entering the apartment, Christopher was seen pulling a green bin. Christopher was not only seen on CCTV, he was also seen by multiple witnesses who were up early that morning, Friday the 11th. One was a garbage truck driver, another was a guy who was to work, and he said he saw a man pulling a green bin that looked heavy. Another witness would later see the man, didn't know who he was, and he said he made eye contact and he looked quote-unquote weird, pulling the bin and dragging it to, you know what he was dragging it to.
They control more sectors than us. Move to counterattack. Ready to deliver supply.
The next morning, Mitchell DeVoe returned, and he was surprised to see Christopher having a nice little snooze on the couch, because Mitchell, you know, while Christopher was staying with him, his girlfriend had first him out, he had set up, you know, a pull-out bed for him, and the mattress was gone. Weird, dude, what happened to the mattress? When Mitchell asked Christopher, hey, what happened to the mattress? Christopher said, I puked on, I got sick, had a bit too much to drink, I worked one last night. Got sick, so we threw the mattress out. And I was like, don't worry, Mitchell, I'll buy you a new one. Forget about it. And in the days that followed that very weekend, so I guess Saturday the 12th, Sunday the 13th, Christopher managed to get back with his girlfriend, which took him out. Good for him. So, all of these sightings were reported police were following the lead of where they think Catherine was on the night she disappeared. You know, from the pub to the witnesses. And so, they had started following Christopher, who was a suspect even before Catherine's body was found. So, when they did find Catherine's body, they swooped in on him and had him by the balls. After his arrest, the police went to the DeVoe apartment. There they found blood. Some of the spots were located on the floor of the den, back of the television, Reno's glass, and on the handle to a cupboard that contained cleaning supplies. All happened fuck. Also on a computer they did searches for memory loss related to alcohol and memory loss due to antidepressants. The autopsy on Catherine Campbell revealed that she had died from strangulation, and she also had a fractured nose and black eyes. Christopher Garnier was then interrogated. It lasted 9.5 hours.
Don't remember it or you don't want to remember? You don't remember. What do you remember? After she leaves the cab, what do you remember?
Our forces have taken more sectors than the enemy. This is how we defeat them.
Chris, do you see what's going on?
Looks like trouble there.
Did you do it? Put your foot down there. We were looking somebody to find it at the top of the roof.
You're outside the combat area. Head back.
Chris,
The enemy has secured Sector Bravo.
can you put her down there? We were looking
What's our
somebody to
status?
find it.
Need to make us losses. Russians are securing objectives fast.
How can somebody, like if I ran over a dog, I'd feel bad. How can somebody look at this, all looking back normal, sex, everything, go to your father's birthday party, and realize when you're driving around, you're changing stuff around, you're out trying to, you're really going to go and do something with your body. Okay, well, the stuff you have in your car, what's that called?
What the fuck?
What's the rest of us? Take it by us.
What else?
Popcorn.
Watch out for hostiles there.
That's what I'm saying. What were those things for?
We'll face defeat if you continue like this. Get 2 or more sectors. Making us pay every minute we're in this. Put the block control of an objective.
Anybody around there?
Let's just see Sector Bravo.
I've been quite on foot. Appreciate your honesty. Appreciate your honesty. That's the close word. Appreciate it.
They've occupied Sector Choppa.
She's still alive.
Both sectors are under enemy control.
She can suffer when you feel her down on that bench. How do you know she's there?
Da ci curiosi de tine jetul ăla Bogdan mi-am pula în el. Nu te poți fă altceva. Iar. Complet.
How did the damn chain?
Ulan diğer.
Remember the captain? She came to the cab, well, obviously.
Down the transport!
They have control of Sector Echo.
You can tell me that you assured me.
The enemy has been affected. They now control all sectors tonight.
That's the case because she wasn't breathing, she wasn't moving, she wasn't safe. Right?
Oh, that's good.
I never replied
Incoming fire!
I'm trying to remember.
Oh, that's
I never heard me like that. Like a... She was bleeding. Assaulted with the heat.
Enemy being killed!
Sector Delta is now ours.
Go down on her back.
Battle outcome looks promising. We control the majority of sectors. Sector Charlie under Russian control.
Christopher then rolled
Vedi, non abbiamo tutto
but it feels quite disingenuous, you know, as shit considering everything that happened.
Oh,
I don't
know where to start. I only told him to start people so close. I never wanted this to happen. I've always been a caring person. I think it's important.
The enemy is trying to take Bravo 1.
I expect you to forgive me for what happened. Sorry in the past for your commitment. I do need you to know that I am so sorry this happened. If I could give my own life to get her back home,
Our enemy just conquered Sector Delta.
would be the rest of it.
Second-degree murder and indignity remains. He pled not guilty. After the confession. After the letter, he's got boxed. He got bail, $100,000 dues, and was put under house arrest. However, he was eventually arrested again after breaching his house arrest. And his trial for the death of Captain Thompson began in November 2017, over 2 years.
We've spent half our resources
Christopher
by now.
claimed that, you know, during that interview in the letter he wrote, he was just giving police what they wanted to hear. Yeah, that old, you know, the old acting like a hard man, an innocent man. When you're removed from being in the room of police officers and you're about 2 years removed from what actually happened. The defense went with all Catherine's fault. Yeah, rough sex, she, you know, it was on. He said she asked for rough sex and for him to choke her. And then, you know, it was an accident.
Lockdown, Sector Bravo.
He also accidentally fractured her nose and blackened both her eyes. They also said, the defense, well, Catherine was a police officer. She could handle herself if he was assaulting her. Why didn't she fight back? The bejesus said of it. And get this, Christopher was also diagnosed with PTSD.
M-am jucat pe tot prin boss, dar are 3 hărți. Cât crezi că pot să joc hărțile alea? Nu pot să joc cu vehiculele, că nu pot să pun tatăle. Trebuie în mijlocul meciului să iau avionul 1 să... Nu știu ce să fac, trebuie să mă duc în meniu, frate, nu pot în timpul zborului, că mă prăbușesc. Am plictisit, frate, are 3 hărți. Ăsta e cool.
In the end, Christopher
Transport
was
disabled!
on both counts, second-degree murder and indignity to human remains. He was sentenced to life in prison.
Well, Aaron, as you can probably imagine, the reaction inside the courtroom was extremely emotional on both sides. Members of Catherine Campbell's family were celebrating, they were crying, they were very emotional about the verdict. Members of Christopher Garnier's family, who have been here through the trial as well, also a lot of tears on that side, in particular from his girlfriend, Brittany Francis, who's been here holding his hand every single day as he's coming out of court. She broke down into tears. I saw him as he was whisked back into court to take a long look at her as he sat down. It's obviously a very emotional day for two families here in Halifax in Wisconsin. And you were able to hear about the work. Certainly, yeah, the Crown had video evidence they brought forward testimony from a number of police officers. So in essence, the story that they told to the jury was that Christopher Garnier and Catherine Campbell both went to a downtown Halifax bar on the night of September the 10th, the early morning of September the 11th. They met for the first time. They spent several hours there together, left together in a taxi, and they went back to an apartment where Christopher Garnier was spending the night because he just broken up with his common-law girlfriend. He was staying at a friend's place. That friend, incidentally, was picked up by police that night and spent the night in quarantine. Now, there's video evidence of a lot of his case, which makes it rather unique. So there was evidence brought in to show the pair in the downtown Halifax bar. Then there was evidence of them leaving and hailing that taxi. But then there's about a 45-minute gap between the time that they are dropped off at that College Street apartment in downtown Halifax to the time Christopher Garnier is picked up again on video camera on surveillance just outside the apartment. He fetches a green bin, and then he wheels that green bin down a Halifax street. He's then picked up later near the Donald Bridge, for anyone who's familiar with Halifax, close to the Halifax Harbor, and he can be seen bringing that green bin around. The Crown alleges that he and Catherine Campbell got home to that apartment. They were in for a very short time with her, and then strangled her until he could pull her hands across. He used a mattress to drag her body outside. He put the body into that green bin, wheeled it through downtown Halifax, dumped it in some bushes. Then he dumped the green bin in another location. He came back to the apartment, brought with him a number of pieces of evidence, some of which was never even found in this case, including the mattress. And then he went to sleep. The defense in this case didn't argue with anything that was caught on video. They did say Christopher Garnier was on video dragging that green bin through Halifax that morning. But what they said that differed from the Crown's case was just that 45 minutes, that key time. Enemy pick! Was in the College Street apartment. They say that Christopher Garnier and Catherine Campbell went back to the apartment. She offered to engage in drug sex, and that Christopher Garnier was going along with that when an accident happened and she was killed by accident. They say that then he was in a dissociative state, he was thinking clearly, and he doesn't remember the entire period of time from when Catherine Campbell was killed to the next morning, save just a few glimpses. So their case was that Christopher Garnier was not in control of his actions from the time that Catherine Campbell died accidentally. Obviously, that was not what the jury agreed with him.
I consider myself incredibly lucky to call Christopher my significant other. He truly is the best kind of person, inside and out. He has saved me from me and given me something to look forward to for the future. Our future. Well, two things. One, Christopher probably doesn't have much of a future. And two, he was hooking up with and then murdered a woman, during that, day you guys were broken up for. That doesn't bother you, at all. His parole eligibility was set for 18.5 years. Throughout all this, remember, poor Christopher has PTSD. He needs treatment. Who is paying for his treatment? You. His treatment was paid for by Veterans Affairs Canada, which is the department within the Government of Canada with responsibility for pensions, benefits, and services for war veterans. Now, Christopher never served. But is that
I love this fucking content.
So it's good to know that, you know, he is getting treatment for his PTSD, which is no joke.
Face minigunul
But
ăsta, vă spun
PTSD
să-l
he got
ascultă pe ziua.
for murdering somebody as opposed to actual people who've been in combat situations. Yeah. It seems possible that maybe Christopher took out the anger he had, you know, from breaking up with his girlfriend on Katrin. You know, maybe that's what drove him to do what he did. He was angry about something, you know, and whatever happened, I guess we don't really know because, well, there was only two people there, and one of them can't tell the story. They were both drinking, although it was determined Katrin, she had been drinking, but she wasn't that drunk. But whatever happened, you know, saying it was some kind of a sex act gone wrong is a joke.
Deploy.
Because, you know, that he accidentally strangled her. He also accidentally fractured her nose and gave her black eyes. Really? Really? How do you accidentally fracture someone's nose?
Eu sper să aibă aceeași controle și Battlefield 6 că...
But not in this case. The defense was pretty disgusting, blaming Katrin for her own death.
E un pic către War Thunder, dar War Thunder e mai...
But you know, just because he's eligible for parole in 13 years does not mean he'll get parole in 13 years. He could be in there a lot longer. Probably will be. The fact that he got the Veteran Affairs Department to pay for his treatment caused quite an outcry in Canada. It seems that he might not be receiving it anymore, but a motion to revoke the Veterans Affairs Canada benefits that have been extended to Christopher Garnier was defeated. So they tried to remove it, and people voted against removing it. Maybe they just thought it would set a precedent, but to be fair, this guy, really? In December 2019, Christopher Garnier appealed. The results of his appeal are still pending. Christopher's last name is also kind of funny, Garnier, because not only is he a sham, he's also a piece of poo, too. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I will see you as always real soon in the next video. Take care of yourselves.
In Scandinavia's heart.
Hannibal.
My company Nordvik has been providing weapons and vehicles to US operatives around the world. That stops today. We want a full-scale assault on the factory. Destroy any local resistance and then engage. Do not let the enemy push you back. Communication will be reestablished en route. Out.
I believe a vehicle of interest entered that same...
So far, Dallas police have arrested 2 people in connection with the murder of Kendra Hatcher. The person who may have planned it all is still on the move.
No, dacă joci în Battlefield 6, n-a pus elicopterul deloc. Deci stai în jos de meciul. Mai n-am chiar să stau la click, să iau elicopterul. Da, mă, pula mea. Când iese jocul, iese.
You and well, my name, in case you're wondering, it's still Mike. And in this, depending on when you're watching it, new/full video, we're gonna look at a plot of the Bang Bang variety. I'm always surprised they're a real thing. Like, I feel like people watch too much of The Sopranos. Or let's get back on track. Kendra Hatcher, a bright, beautiful dentist, was the target. Why? Well, didn't a man fall in love with Kendra? A man by the name of Dr. Ricardo Ricky's ex-girlfriend, Brenda Delgado. She was not too happy that Ricky fell in love with someone else. And so, what happened? Now let me tell you what happened.
Mamă, cât are locul.
They're in the fire!
So, Brenda and Kendra, the 2 women at the heart of this case, and in the heart of Dr. Ricky Kaniagua. Let's start with Brenda, shall we? Brenda moved to the United States when she was quite young, in 1982, after her father took the family from central Mexico to Dallas, Texas, looking for, as most migrants are, a simple opportunity. While Brenda's father got a job in construction, her mother worked for the U.S. Postal Service and cleaned houses. Brenda herself was determined to excel. Brenda was loved by her teachers, and after she graduated high school, she had dreams to go to medical school, but her family kind of quickly poo-pooed that idea. They simply couldn't afford it. So Brenda ended up working a number of jobs. In a florist's shop, as a waitress, before eventually ending up as a dental assistant in North Dallas. And, in time, she would meet Ricardo Paniagua, an introverted, serious academic who wrote a number of papers with descriptive titles as Selective Tyrosine Kinase Inhibition by Imatinib Mesylate for the treatment of autoimmune arthritis. Fascinating reading, I have no doubt. Sorry guys, I know you're disappointed. Don't have time to go through today. He was in residency in a Dallas hospital and I moved from California, and at the time he was actually finalizing a divorce. So things between Ricky and Brenda, they hit it off in November 2012. They moved in together and things were looking good. You probably know by now that if I say that, things are going to go south pretty quickly. In early 2013, Brenda got pregnant. That's discussing it with Ricky and she decided to have an abortion. It just wasn't the right time. A few months later, Brenda enrolled in the dental hygiene program in Sanford Brown College. And a few months after that, they broke up. Why? Not really too sure. Maybe just Ricky wasn't as serious about their relationship as Brenda was. You'll see she's very serious. She was very serious about their relationship. And, they broke up, but they said they would remain friends. And this is when things get weird. A few months after a break, Ricky decided to enroll in a salsa class. I don't know how terrible that was, just so you know. And who would he meet there? The first lesson he goes to Brenda. Whoa! What are the odds you could be here? Didn't know you liked salsa. They, end up dancing together, and hey, they decide to get back together. They would break up again a couple of months later. So in February 2015, they were officially donezo.
Hostiles invading one of our objectives.
Strange. Heating, because everywhere Ricky would go jogging, he'd bump into Brenda. Go to the store. Hey Brenda, what are you doing here? Anywhere he would go, she was there. Small town Dallas, I guess. I know it's actually quite hard to put this on a coincidence when you factor in the fact that Brenda had access to all of Ricky's email passwords, all of his email accounts. She had a secret key to his apartment. She knew all of his information on his iCloud. She could log in at any time, and she had GPS location on his phone. So anything Ricky did, Brenda knew it. Even though they were broken up, Brenda was keeping tabs on them. And on an early June day in 2015, Brenda got some devastating news. Ricky had fallen in love with someone else. He didn't tell her to stick the knife out. He was just like, hey, listen, I met somebody else, I really like her. I'd rather you found out from me than from someone else. And this person he had fallen in love with, Kendra, was happy. As you can imagine, Brenda was not happy about this. Kendra was from a small town in Illinois. She was an all-American girl. Captain of her high school cheerleading squad and the girls' volleyball team, went on church building trips, did Bible studies for low-income children, eventually graduating from the University of Kentucky College of Dentistry, where she would spend her spring breaks working with Habitat for Humanity, traveling to Ecuador to fix kids' teeth for free. She was decent, I guess you could say is an understatement. She, like Ricky, had been married before and had moved to Dallas for a fresh start. And wouldn't she meet Ricky on Tinder in May 2015, 3 months after he broke up with Brenda. So, as you can imagine, this drove Brenda nuts. It was all she would talk about to anyone who would listen. Brenda would go on dates. She would only talk about Ricky and Kendra. A new roommate moved in with Brenda. She would only talk about Ricky and Kendra so much, the roommate got the hell out of her. She began to slyly ask if someone knew someone who would hurt someone. One time she was going for a drink with her cousin at a bar and she brought along a goddamn baseball bat. She said, will you take this baseball bat and go and intimidate Kendra for me? Her cousin said no, which I think was the right decision. And Brenda would meet Crystal Cortez, a friend of the roommate, the one that made a hasty getaway because Brenda would shut the fuck up about Ricky and Kendra. Crystal, again, who worked in a dentist's office. By the way, that's 3 people who worked in dentist's office. Crystal, Kendra, and Brenda. Is there something about dentists? So Brenda began to kind of lure in Crystal. She would take her out for dinner, take her out for drinks. She just wanted somebody to listen to her spouting shit about Kendra and Ricky. And This would culminate with Brenda offering Crystal $500 for extraction. For days, Brenda and Crystal followed Kendra around Dallas, armed with night vision goggles, covert-like. And one day, they met Christopher, a neighbor of Crystal's mother. Christopher was a small-time drug dealer with a criminal record, and he needed money to start up a prostitution ring. What a piece of shit. So, Brenda offered him $3,000 to carry out the mission. $3,000 that was made up of drugs. And meanwhile, around this time, Ricky and Kendra were planning on getting married, and were going to move away to California. When Brenda found out about this, you know, she was still hacking Ricky's online shit. She knew something needed to be done soon. On the 2nd of September 2015, Ricky and Kendra were actually due to go to Cancun on holiday the next day. Brenda, she thought to herself she definitely needed an alibi for that very day. She met up with a friend of hers, Jose. They went to the library together, and then they went for drinks together in Blue Chevys. Now that day, Brenda asked Jose if she could borrow his car. For one, it was balls. He owned the Jeep, and he said, yeah, sure, if you can borrow my car for a bit, that's fine. Brenda got hold of Jose's Jeep. She gave Crystal a shot. Crystal picked up Christopher Love, and they went to where they knew Kendra Hatcher lived. They waited in Kendra's apartment parking lot. And as soon as Kendra arrived home after a long day of work, as she was getting out of her car, Christopher ran up and shot her in the head. He also stole her purse.
Secunda în care tot are loc.
At the time of the murder, Brenda was in Chili's with Jose having a few drinks. They taxied back to Jose's. Crystal rocked up. Hey, here's your car back, Jose. Thanks for lending me your Jeep. And then Brenda and Crystal get out of there. So, the police were on the case. They spoke to a very distraught Ricky. I believe, you know, his love had been murdered in such a brutal way. And Ricky couldn't think of anybody who would want to hurt her or hurt him. He should have thought a little harder. However, as Kendra's purse was missing, the police took them down. It was a robbery gone wrong or something like that.
All of Charlie sector is in enemy hands. Our forces no longer hold Delta 1. They hold more sectors than us. We must alter our strategy. Return to the engagement at once.
Would then later release this image of the vehicle believed to have been involved in Kendra's murder.
Detectives want to find the driver of the Jeep Cherokee. They believe that person may know who murdered the dentist in an uptown luxury high-rise. 35-year-old Kendra Hatcher was found shot to death in the parking garage of the building on March 7th. Her loved ones tonight do not appear
shocked as residents are. Kendra Hatcher's family say for them that feeling is only amplified. The local dentist recently found love and saw herself over to San Francisco to meet with her boyfriend. Hatcher's family say she never mentioned she was in any type of trouble.
Now Jose, the friend Brenda was with at the time of the murder, he recognized the vehicle because it was his. His Jeep was used as a getaway vehicle in Kendra's murder. So he was obviously quite startled. He told the police like straight away as he was shitting himself A friend of mine named Brenda and Brenda's friend Crystal borrowed my car that day. Maybe you should look at them. I'm getting scared. The police, they brought Brenda and Crystal.
Shield is out!
But he was cute on Wednesday. And I am the guy that's... Come on, and they came up with the best. So we sit down and talk. Kind of figure out what's going on and get your version of the events. One of the things that I do as a detective, I know you've never been here before. At least I don't think you have. No. Okay. So you're probably a little nervous. You don't have to worry about, I'm not going to be yelling and slapping my hand on the table or any of that kind of stuff. That's not my style. The way that I work, I like to believe what people are telling me. I know sometimes when you're nervous, things may slip your mind, or you may get a little hurried and say things a little different. It's cool. Okay, I can understand this is an intense situation for a lot of people. I didn't think it. I like that. Yeah. Yeah, well, you know,
she recognized that I was wearing an I am second bracelet. And she said that she reached out to me to let me know that she liked that and that she has me. It caught me off guard. Normally, when we begin an interview, people that are coming to a homicide interrogation room, being questioned about a homicide, normally they're a little more closed. She was actually open to the conversation. It seemed like she was trying to build rapport with me as well. That's what I took that as. She was trying to connect with me as soon as she came in. That's normally my job. She beat me to the conversation.
A young lady was killed. Kendra Asher was killed on Wednesday, September 2nd. She was dating, I think, a guy that you used to date. The way that your name came up in the investigation was linked to the video. Okay, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit specifically about Wednesday, what you were doing Wednesday, and the incident about Mosquito. What did you learn about Kendra?
I have no idea. I kind of see things that I really want to do. You're gonna have to, what I'm saying, let me know how I can help or how I can source.
What did you say? I'm sorry. What you see is me.
Like, I know that they say like there's been sharing like someone was like a feet on Kendra, and that's all.
Oh, I mean,
you on Facebook. Okay. And that's all I know, but I have to.
That's how you found out it was from Facebook.
Yeah.
Marchează unul vehicul, frate.
Were you in her prison?
No, I don't.
Once I started asking questions that she was having a difficulty answering, I noticed she kept leaning forward, almost as pushing her breast up. And I don't know if it was some form of distraction, but she was posturing. I felt it kind of get me off guard or distract the interrogation.
Did you know who she was?
No.
So you didn't know who she was? This is what I'm saying. Okay. First of all, borrows the Jeep. She borrows the Jeep. The key thing in all this is Jeep. Okay, but I'm gonna tell you why. The Jeep, the way Crystal gets the Jeep is through you. Okay. The young lady, the boyfriend, the relation is you. You to him. Crystal ends up in this parking garage. Your friend's Jeep, your ex-boyfriend's girlfriend. All three of those things point back to you. That is you. You're the one that did these things. So what I'm asking you is, how does this happen? And that would make me very uncomfortable if my friend was in this area. My friend is borrowing my other friend's Jeep, and my ex-boyfriend's girlfriend is here. One of the things that I looked at on the internet the other day, just I like reading comments on stories to see what people are saying. I look at comments, you know what people are saying about this? Love trick. That's interesting. I'm gonna find out what happened to this young lady. I will get to her family. I will get to her mom, just like I would do the same thing if something happened. You know, One of the hardest things about doing this is having to deal with and grieving families. There's nothing that really you can kind of compare that to, but it makes something inside of you. It gives you a determination that you're not going to stop until you find out the truth. And so my advice to you is to be honest, okay? Because your honesty is only going to benefit you. Because I'm going to find out the truth one way or another. Okay? Now, I know that you have communicated with Crystal. I know exactly what it's about, and I understand what it's like. Make sure we maintain it. I understand what it's like to want something that you can't have. I also know what it feels like to want something so bad that you will. Sometimes you do that with money. Sometimes you do that with attention. Sometimes you do that with love. And I understand those things. I understand how you feel. I can't understand why somebody would kill someone else. I've never killed anybody. But I have had my heart broken. And I know what it feels like. There's not a person in this world that hasn't gone through that kind of pain. And I can't tell you what was going through your head. I have a good idea, but I can't be a translator for your pain. All of this is revolving around you. This whole thing. And it's all over something that you couldn't have.
Brenda gave them nothing. She was booked in for an unpaid parking ticket, paid the fine and left. Crystal, however, she gave them everything. And looking into her phone records, the police found out about Christopher Love. And when the police searched Christopher Love's apartment, they found the murder weapon. So the police, now they had all their ducks in a row. And they wanted to speak to Brenda. But Brenda was gone.
In the course of the last month, Dallas Police homicide detectives have been working tirelessly together with our partners at the Dallas County District Attorney's Office and our federal partners, the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office, piecing together information related to the murder of Dr. Kendra Hatcher, who was killed on September 2nd, 2015. We announced the arrest of Christopher Love, black male, 3/23 of 1984, a person we have identified as having shot Dr. Hatcher. Currently in the Dallas County Jail for $2.5 million. Additionally, we have secured the warrant for the arrest of Brenda Delgado, Latin female, 6/18 of 1982. Also for the charge of capital murder for her involvement in the community.
The battle goes well. We have conquered more sectors than our enemy.
It was a murder for hire. No, not at this point. I won't discuss or speculate as to who she might be, or all I will suggest to her specifically is that she turn herself in as quickly as possible.
Breaking news, the woman previously implicated as the mastermind behind last month's murder of a dentist in Uptown Dallas has been named as the result. Good evening.
She is still on the run. Dr. Kendra Hatcher was murdered in her Uptown apartment a month ago. This last month already arrested Crystal Cortez, who they say acted as a getaway driver. In response, they've arrested the gunman and are searching for that last suspect.
The FBI put Brenda Delgado on its most wanted fugitives list and offered a $100,000 reward for information leading to her arrest. Brenda's family, however, believed she could never be capable of something like this.
Don't shoot. Wait.
Brenda was living in Torreon, Mexico, for 6 months before they finally found her and brought her back to America. Now, Brenda was both a U.S. citizen and Mexican citizen, and according to Mexican law, she could not be extradited to another country that would seek the death penalty. The American authorities agreed not to let her, I guess, and she was brought back. But all through this, Brenda had a pretty good alibi. She was at Chili's with Jose having a great time. So the prosecutor arranged a deal with Crystal Cortez. 35 years, girl is 15, if she spilled the beans.
We're coming up with several.
Break for some water.
One of the pads were to injure her.
Sapete una gettola.
Shoot her directly.
Christopher went on trial first in October 2018. Guilty. And Christopher Love was sentenced to death for murdering Kendra Hatcher. Brenda's trial began in June 2019. Funnily enough, she organized the entire plot to try and get back with Rick so she could have him for herself.
On the right side!
There was commotion going on outside. There were police vehicles. There was a lot of activity. It didn't even dawn on me. I didn't even consider the possibility of it. But then when he held up his hand and said, "Hold on," it just bypassed that simple process. And now my mind is starting to jump to worst case scenarios. When I went to the taco stand a little bit earlier, around 8:15, I had seen that there was commotion. In fact, I had sent a message to Kendra saying, "Hey, by the way, the entrance to your parking garage needs to be blocked. It doesn't look like you're going to be able to get in and probably have to find any other place to park." So then that's where I start. And now I'm just the possibility of something happening to Kendra starts walking through my mind, and I'm really, I'm scared.
Which one of the
This would be the entirety of her interaction with him during the trial. And, well, I guess forever after.
Yes, sir. She's at the end of the desk. She's wearing a dark jacket.
Brenda will be found guilty of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison.
We have captured all of Delta Sector.
Easy case. Yeah. Although I think all murder cases are by their general nature. And Kendra Hatcher, you know, she was truly murdered. She's like such a good person. Just wanted to help a generous soul. And then all bitter lives that were ruined. Brenda just couldn't move on. So, instead of getting back with the love of her life, she just got left. Nope. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. I'll see you as always real soon in the next video. Take care of yourselves. Bye, everybody.
Enemy vehicle down!
Hey, you, and well, my name is Mike, and in this old video, we're going to look at a case that was big in ours, but not so big. Well, really anywhere else. The case of Elaine O'Hara and Graham Dwyer. This happened in 2012, and is heavily based in, like, you know, the good old BDSM stuff, so that's something to look forward to. We're also going to look at some particularly texts that are not so nice.
Da, am uitat că nu mai am
So
flare.
look forward to that also.
No more flare.
And what happened when Elaine O'Hara
Te-ai pierdut flare-ul.
disappeared?
Oh my god, it's so good to be able to select every
We've
time.
won this.
Every time I have chopper, no problem. No need to wait.
So I guess we should begin with what happened to Elaine O'Hara. Elaine was born in Dublin in 1976 on St. Patrick's Day, no less. Growing up, she was bullied quite a lot at school, resulting in her developing a number of mental health issues and having to be hospitalized in psychiatric care. She would later be diagnosed with depression, borderline personality disorder, while suffering at the same time from asthma and diabetes. At 26 years old in 2002, her mother died, and later her doctor also died. Her doctor was actually a fellow by the name of Anthony Clare, who was pretty well known back in the day.
For every minor ailment, we drink gallons of cough mixture. And as for tranquilizers, drugs aren't always the only cure for your complaint, and your doctor may prefer other treatments, like exercise, a healthier diet, or a change in living habits.
She was actually quite close with her doctor, that's why that's worth mentioning. Because obviously she had to go see her doctor quite a bit from those issues I just told you about.
Battlefield 6 needs a lot
So these two things, unsurprisingly, did not help her very much. I don't know how many people they do help, but she took it
playing the same
worse
Cairo
than
map,
most.
Cairo map,
Living in
same
South
fucking
Dublin,
map.
she was a lonely woman. She worked as a childcare assistant and also part-time in a local shop. And she was taking night classes in childcare, hoping and dreaming to become a Montessori teacher. So I guess all of that kind of brings us up to when she went missing, which is the point of the story. 36-year-old Elaine O'Hara disappeared from her home on August 22nd, 2012. Now, it was first thought that she had disappeared while volunteering at the tall ships races that were ending in Dublin around that time.
An abandoned ship
She had been
beach, the
planning
old
to
Panama
volunteer
Canal has
at
been
them,
revealed as a
and they were
hotbed
kind of a
for
big
Russian
deal.
intelligence
But when
operations.
the police were alerted,
We
they
need
began
to secure the
investigating her
vessel
home,
and all surrounding territory before
as
the
they
enemy
always
shows up to
do,
blow their secret
her
sky
purse
high.
and phone
Watch if
at
that wind
home.
changes, though.
However, what
Last
was
thing we need
weird
is an
was
entire
that when the
unit
police
tossed out
were
by a
viewing
tornado.
the
This is a hot drop.
CCTV
Second you land, be
cameras,
ready to
of her apartment building, they saw her leaving the apartment and went out the door of the building with a different phone in her paws. A mystery phone. I wonder if that will be important later. Who knows? We'll see. She was last seen by a jogger in Shingana Park at 5:40 p.m. asking for directions. Shingana Park is about 15 minutes by car away from her home. Now in Shingana Park is Shingana Cemetery, where Elaine's mother was buried. A woman fitting Elaine's description was seen there, crying loudly beside an old grave. Freaky as shit. The woman who saw her in Shingana Cemetery said she couldn't positively identify it as Elaine. She couldn't see her face. She only saw her from behind, but said that she was a big-ish girl who was not recently bereaved. Now, the police did find her car in that park, and it was assumed there's dangerous cliffs in Shingana Park. It was assumed that she had been judged to her death, given her mental health history of self-harm, and earlier the day she went missing, she had actually been released from a psychiatric hospital after she entered one having suicidal thoughts. So, seemed to fit. But they found no body. It would remain that way for over a year. So this is when things go up a notch. Over a year after Elaine O'Hara's mysterious disappearance in August 2013, 3 men in Bartree Reservoir found a bag in the water. Now the summer of 2013 was a long haul. Which is weird for Ireland. And so the water in the reservoir was lower than usual. That's how they found the bag. Bartree Reservoir is about 30 minutes by car from Elaine's house. Inside the bag, they found, handcuffs, clothes, a ball gag, and restraints.
extreme choice.
Però avevo di caffè.
Però ci vogliono use like a kite to go to weather.
Quanto viaggio
And they
direi?
want to use the window. Because we use the outside camping. And then that's why it's not getting part of the road and put it away because a couple of sets of handcuffs and neighbors trying to once they were from the mass. It was just a little strap basically that came around and everyone just there for the ball placing it out.
I'm looking the police to this because they found this stuff.
What the fuck is that?
Someone was having a bit of fun, but it was kind of weird. Dave, one of the guys who found it, he put it in his van. It was a lot of dealing. So he alerted the Irish police, the Gardaí. Then they hopped by the reservoir and did some digging on their own. And what did they find? Well, more handcuffs, keys, a leather mask, a knife, and an inhaler. They also found a supermarket loyalty card, which turned out to be Elaine. They were attracted to being Elaine by they basically followed the barcode. And they would also later find in the same reservoir 2 mobile phones, a pair of glasses and sunglasses matching Elaine's prescription, and a rucksack.
Hostile troops concentrating on Charlie 2. Situation. We've got problems. Russians grabbed up territory back. Marking threat. Sector Charlie is falling. Russians have control of most sectors. Enemy has secured Sector Echo.
So, seems pretty obvious someone was dumping evidence
Contact.
in
We've
the
engaged the
reservoir
enemy.
to hide their tracks.
plan for this.
No
Go.
diggity, no doubt. And one more thing, it's probably important to note, actually because this is how they found the body. Toward the end of August 2013, around the same time those 3 lads found Elaine's stuff in the reservoir, a dog trainer would regularly take her dogs for walks in the foothills of the Dublin mountains, really not far from where Elaine lived. So this woman would take the dogs out, they'd be off running around, exploring, having a grand old time, and those dogs would bring back bones for the dog trainer. Yeah, at first the woman thought, these bones, they were animal bones, deer bones, the dogs were finding and bringing back. So she didn't think anything of it, and this went on for a couple of weeks, until one day in around early September, a dog brought a bone back while it was rummaging around through the forests of the mountains. The bone had a bit of clothing. Either the deer were having a fancy dress party, or that ain't no deer. Exploring the area, the remains of Elaine O'Hara were found, though there wasn't much. A few scattered bits and pieces, jawbone, rib cage. She'd been there for 13 months. The Gardaí were then contacted, and they only found 2/3 of her body. Animals had taken the rest. She was identified through dental records.
Skeletal remains were discovered here in a wooded area at
One of our objectives is in attack.
So, holy shit, you might say. And so we got one of them murders on our hands, and the investigation done begun. The Guardian discovered that Elaine had been visiting a BDSM website for 5 years before she disappeared. Under the username Treemy, not me, that's not her name, shit. Hers was called Help Me Learn 38. to another account, Architect 72, and the police would discover who was behind the profile of Architect 72. It would turn out to be a man named Ray, who was actually shocking. He was an architect. I can't believe it. I know. What are the odds his job would match his profile using him?
Architect Graham Dwyer, Obermann Associates. Graham specializes in computer 3D perspective. So tell me your inspiration for the room.
Well, the challenge here was to create an individual look around a standard white bathroom suite. So the approach I took was a modern one, using simple geometry and colour effect.
The first thing I noticed is this amazing wall. Is it a wall? Is it a wall? Is it a wall?
Brilliant. Indeed. Yes, you can cut lino into any shape to suit your design.
Excellent.
The mirror is quite unusual in that it has lights in it.
Great stuff, Graham. You see why they pay you the big bucks.
Exactly.
Great.
He was a couple of years older than Wayne. He was married and had 3 children. He was a director at an architect firm and enjoyed the high life. He was deep in debt as a result of the 2008 crash. And it turned out him and Elaine took partaking in the BDSM lifestyle. As we do, but like hardcore. You see where this is going. Bondage, violence, and knives. They had a relationship from 2007 that ended late 2008, but began again in 2011 with a text from Graham that said, "This is an old friend. We used to play together. Miss it terribly. Would love to catch up." Elaine replied, "I'm not in blood anymore." But he sure was. Violent homemade sex videos and fragments of emails were retrieved from both their laptops. In some videos, he was having sex with her while she was gagged. He was stabbing her. Yikes!
Back in the choppa.
They also found videos of him doing stuff like that to other women. So, analysing more of the CCTV from Elaine's apartment complex, the police noticed the man visiting her apartment numerous times. A week before Elaine's disappearance, the spoiler alert if it was right, was spotted with the same backpack found in the reservoir. The Gardaí also found a splooge in Elaine's bed that would later be linked to one brain fired by ODNK. Don't know where it's at. And it turns out that the mystery phone that Elaine was seen with, leaving the apartment complex, you know, that wasn't the regular phone, slave phone. Exciting. Recovered texts from the 2 phones that were found in the reservoir. They was nasty. It showed that he was extremely manipulative to a vulnerable person like Elaine. Violence. It was only going one way. But unfortunately, for one person who was into knives and blood play, so he didn't kill himself for the ultimate sexual experience. Right here. So let's go through some texts. Graham, or rather, I want to stick my knife. Okay, I'm actually going to text again, but I'm going to add some funny music. Because this is just disturbing. I want to stick my knife in flesh while I am sexually aroused. I would like to stab a girl to death sometime. Still dying to knife someone. Stab, rape, kill. It will all be worth it when I kill you. Smiley face. I'm your secret killer. My urge to rape, stab, or kill is huge. You have to help me control or satisfy it. Elaine would respond that she only wanted a loving relationship. A baby. And not to be... stop. Not to be stabbed anymore. I'm a person. I have dignity. Graham responded. Not to be chained up, you know. If anything happens to you, who knows anything? You will have stab wounds, you know the truth. Last you did not bleed, these will. No. So the Gardaí found all of this stuff on their laptops. And it was on Graham, funnily enough. He initially said, Elaine. I'm wrapping my brains.
Still holding out.
No idea who you're talking about. Sorry. Then he would admit that he did know Elaine and they had a relationship. He didn't kill her. He swore he didn't kill her. Hey, sluts, not me. Now, the police disagreed that he was never granted bail, though.
speak during the brief hearing because he's facing a charge of murder. An application for bail will have to be made to the High Court, as the District Court does not have the jurisdiction to grant it. Judge Bridget Riley remanded Graham Dwyer in custody to appear again at Clover Hill District Court this day week.
And they actually found some more sick shit on the laptops. His laptop was special. Short stories that he wrote about him traveling to Newcastle in the United Kingdom and stabbing a woman there. And another one that was titled Killing Darcy. Darcy is a real person. Darcy Day, who lived in Maine, USA. He had met her on the internet and offered to kill her. She had struggled with suicidal thoughts at the time, and well, unfortunately, around this time she ran into this big old piece of shit.
Just fell to the enemy.
She didn't die, spoiler alert.
Taking fire!
The trial began in January 2016. The defense said there's nothing linking it to her actions. Her body, well, skeleton. It had no cause of death. And she was suicidal. The defense kind of just kept saying, you know, she just killed herself. Yeah, as you do. They said, yeah, sure, you talked about killing her and stabbing her a lot. Come on, you can just play around. There's no way that you know if that's what actually ended up happening to her. That, you know, he actually meant those things. That's just a coincidence. He would never actually do it. The prosecution said that the evidence pointed to a plan by Graham to commit, get away with murder. He had used Elaine's low self-esteem to manipulate her. He had a desire to kill. They said Elaine was not a willing participant in sexual violence. She repeatedly expressed her wish not to be stabbed and not to be beaten by him. She only wanted companionship, love, and ultimately a child. Knowing that she had recently been released from a psychiatric hospital, Graham lured her to Shingan Track. Got her in her car, took her to the mountains, murdered her, and thought that if she ever would be discovered, well, as he had said, they would just assume it was suicide. But his attempt to conceal the relationship he had with Elaine by dumping all their shit in the reservoir
Sector Bravo has been secured.
ran him enough to prove that he knew what he was doing. In March 2015, Graham Dwyer was convicted in a unanimous verdict. He was sentenced to life imprisonment, which in Ireland actually was about 18 years.
space was granted for the aircraft evaluation of data, just for evaluation and use of data, and those to investigate the process of cycles. The investigation reflected the era of information technology, and that it marries detailed and precise and news information derived from fundamental beliefs with most sophisticated technological systems. Just for the time that found conservative remembrance and will affect the family for 9 years to come. Today, my thoughts and the thoughts of the entire investigation are with the O'Hara family. Personally, I can only hope no family would ever have to live here of Frank O'Hara and his family having you.
Hostile control sector Alpha.
We are moving to attack Alpha 1.
So after the trial was all done and dusted, it wasn't quite over. And this part is actually continuing to this day. See, in 2018, Rainwire actually won a legal battle against the Irish state. The Gardaí accessing the stone was a key part of putting this fucker away, but it was against the European Union law, the right to privacy, and the retention of data. So the long and short of it is, a court ruled that Irish legislation, which allows data from mobile phones to European access, is against EU law and the European Convention on Human Rights, because you don't need a court order to review it. Essentially, it comes down to there was an incompatibility of Irish law and European Union law. And the case has recently, and when I say recently, I mean in 2020, been referred to the European Union Court of Justice. So, I'm not sure if that means he can actually be released from prison because, even though they take on the information. So I feel
They're down to the last of their
sick
attack force.
after all that. And you know, during the trial, a number of witnesses actually came forward, female witnesses, who said, yeah, Graham did similar stuff as that. He was,
The enemy has captured
he
Sector
was
Delta.
on the road to killing probably multiple people again. There could be a lot more women than men. I need a drink after all that. I'm sure you do too. Actually, when I'm posting this, it's Paddy's Day, so I'll drink that out. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I will see you as always real soon in the next video. Take care of yourselves. Bye guys.
Sector Echo has been taken by the enemy.
A barren stretch of desert is dimly lit.
Time to turn this battle around, troops. We must claim more
There are
sectors.
still 30 minutes before sunrise, but above the clouds the stars have already faded, and a deep, hidden, shadowless light suffuses the desert below. In the last few months, the flat, featureless ground has been transformed. A 30-meter tall steel tower bearing a terrible payload stands alone, fripped to the Oscura Mountains, surrounded by little more than crisscrossing tire tracks, leading 3 kilometers from a now empty adobe ranch house.
My sentry is ready.
Beyond, situated to the north, west and south, all of a deliberate 9-kilometer radius from the tower, are 3 plant-buried shelters, each with their windows turned towards their joint focus. The scientists and soldiers now encamped within these shelters cannot see the tower at the circle's epicenter, but they will soon see, all too well, the effects of its fateful payload. Not knowing what to expect, they lie on the ground, feet pointed towards the invisibly distant tower, and listen to the countdown as it crackles by the stress system. At precisely 5:30 a.m. on the 16th of July 1945, an earth-shaking boom marked the beginning of a new era of civilization. And the birth of a new branch of physics. The so-called gadget bomb, which had been hoisted to the top of the firing tower, imploded, beginning a devastating nuclear chain reaction in its plutonium core. The nuclear bomb exploded with a force equivalent to 21,000 tons of TNT. Within a fraction of a second, the steel tower was vaporized and the desert floor melted to a green glass. Dim dawn turned to bright day in an instant. The blast ballooned and then mushroomed into the now iconic symbol of the nuclear age. This was the Trinity test, the first ever full-scale detonation of a nuclear bomb which would come to shape the course of history in the field of science.
We are moving to
The
assault Charlie 2.
1930s had seen monumental advances in science and radiation research. The spectacular discovery of nuclear fission in 1938 was overshadowed by the outbreak of war just a year later. But physicists were quick to realize the devastating potential of their new discovery. Albert Einstein co-signed a letter to then President Roosevelt with a warning. It is conceivable that extremely powerful bombs of a new type must be constructed. So, the US developed their own bomb before any other nation could. The test was considered a great success. Just 21 days later, the United States dropped a similar atomic bomb. Look at that! So-called Fat Man of the city of Nagasaki, Japan. Had not been for the deadly pressures of war, nuclear science may have followed a very different and likely slower path. The exploration of the atom, one of the tiniest particles of matter, had until then been little more than curiosity, the domain of at first philosophers and then gentlemen scholars. Small improvements in experimental methods and equipment brought small breakthroughs until the fateful revelation that atoms and their nuclei were indeed not the end of the Russian doll. A discovery that led directly to New Mexico and then Japan. As the glow from that first nuclear explosion faded, it left behind a new thirst to understand what our universe was actually made of and how it came to be. That journey, the quest to discover what makes up everything, would see scientists delve ever deeper down a rabbit hole of matter and mass, of fields and particles, and even further back in time, in a century-long quest to answer the immortal question: what is, at its most fundamental level, everything? And perhaps, even more importantly, is any of it really real at all?
Exposure. Supărat, dar jocul ăsta chiar are content față de unele gacha care bine nu compari, dar zic așa că dai 200 de lei pe un joc din ăsta și
This video is sponsored by Magellan TV, the documentary streaming service.
Question: how long does it take for a black hole to die? A. 10 to the power of 67 years. B. Google years. C. It never dies. It just sort of lingers like a bad smell.
That's right, it's 10 to the power of 67 years. Ages. And the fact they evaporate at all is due to Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Something you can find out plenty more by watching our recommendation on Magellan TV this week. Secrets of Quantum Physics 4K with Jim Al-Khalili, a fascinating, mind-melting dive into the aching and confusing quantum world. They're a sort of Netflix for documentaries with more than 3,000 documentaries to choose from on a wide range of topics, including a great selection on space, cosmology and physics. So, click on the link in the description for an exclusive month-long free trial of the history of universe physics. It was ancient Indian philosophers of the 8th century BC who first asserted that nothing we experience is in fact real. Such an extreme reductionist philosophy is simple enough to follow. Can be broken down to its component parts. Wheels, axles, yoke. Those components can too be broken down. The wheel becomes a hub, rim, and spokes. Each succession of small parts can be broken down further by hand and with specialist tools until nothing remains but a collection of near-smooth spokes, each indistinguishable from the next. What, then, are the objects of our experience is everything, if not parts, of such space, amassed and organized to give the appearance of something greater. These remaining existential puzzles were visited again by ancient Greek philosophers some 400 years later. Considering the same problem, Democritus and Leucippus came to the same conclusion. Ultimately, everything we can see and touch can be broken down, time and time again, until an index is reached of tiny particles that can be divided no further. Democritus gave these hypothetical particles a name, defining them by their fundamentally indivisible nature. Atoms, meaning cuttable. Today, we know them as atoms. And yet, it wasn't until the 19th century that science, rather than philosophy, allowed researchers to probe the nature of these mysterious, uncuttable atoms. In the early 1800s, English chemist John Dalton spent his summers in the mountains of the
Resources available for support,
Northwest England. Before the advent of comprehensive maps of the region, he was an authority, measuring their altitude and distances through his own hiking experience. One can imagine his mind wandering in these hills, both measuring and musing upon the remarkable theories he was forming within his Manchester laboratory. The Dalton spent the rest of his time analysing the nature of various chemical compounds. These compounds were as distinct as the Greeks he knew so well. What was it about their basic nature that made them
We'll face defeat if you continue like this. You need to secure more sectors.
he posited were composed of simple, indivisible building blocks that related to the elements that they belonged. So methane was a combination of carbon and hydrogen contained indivisible atoms of carbon and of hydrogen. Nitrous oxide was built from nitrogen atoms and oxygen atoms, and so on. Unknowingly invoking the ancient philosophies, synthesizing the works of his contemporaries, and drawing on his belief in the ultimate simplicity of nature, Dalton introduced the scientific concept of the atom to the world. But of course, as we know now, this learning process was premature. Atoms were not indivisible, not the rightful scientific heir to the ancient Greek atoms. Scientists discovered during the second half of the 19th century. While investigating the conduction of electric charge, scholars began to hone in on a different type of particle, which seemed unique in its ability to carry electricity. It could move through a vacuum after all other free matters had been removed, and seemed to be present regardless of the surrounding materials. By 1897, English physicist J.J. Thomson had isolated the negatively charged particle responsible for electric current, which he fittingly called the electron. Faced with this new discovery, researchers scrambled to reconcile Thomson's electrons with the 2,000-year-old theory of fundamental atoms. Electrons could travel alone, but they also seemed to be born of atomic matter. So how could the two be related? Further experiments by the New Zealand-born physicist Ernest Rutherford helped solve the mystery. By firing radioactive particles at a thin sheet of gold foil, Rutherford showed that they were sometimes reflected, sometimes deflected, and sometimes, mysteriously, passed straight through. This couldn't happen if atoms were solid spheres that were tightly pushed together. So, Rutherford suggested and later defined a new model consisting of a condensed, positively charged nucleus surrounded by orbiting electrons. Much as planets orbit the sun, the mass of an atom was concentrated in its nucleus, in positively charged particles that Rutherford identified as protons. And as it later transpired, as with our solar system, atoms are mostly empty space. The hydrogen atom, for example, is almost 100% nothing. With the distinction between protons and electrons, the concept of the unsplittable atom had been comprehensively split. It was split even further in the 1930s by the discovery of yet another particle that resides inside an atom's nucleus. Thus, though impossible to know at the time, starting a steady march towards the atomic bomb. James Chapman had spent his early academic years working with Douglas Rutherford in Manchester. When World War I broke out, he was trapped behind enemy lines and spent much of the conflict in a prison camp, where he nevertheless managed to set up a small lab and a science club with his fellow prisoners. He returned to England to finish his PhD in 1921 and pursued the thorny problem of heliums, extra mass. It was well known that the atoms of helium had the atomic number of 2, meaning it had 2 protons and 2 corresponding electrons. Helium's mass was actually twice what you'd expect from the mass of those 2 protons. There must be something else heavy but uncharged, lurking in the nucleus, contributing to the mass. Through a series of inspired deductions and experiments involving radioactive beryllium and paraffin wax, Chadwick achieved what his colleagues and mentors could not. He found conclusive evidence for this mysterious neutral particle, the neutron, earning himself the 1945 Nobel Prize in the process. So the neutron was soon seized upon as a tool for further exploration of atomic composition. Scientists began bombarding existing atoms with neutrons in an attempt to increase their mass and alter the composition of their nuclei. But in 1938, Austrian physicist Louise Meitner realized that neutron impacts had the potential to do something unexpected. Instead of adding to the mass of an atom, a neutron could instead trigger that atom to split, sharing its protons and electrons between 2 distinct new atoms and releasing a huge amount of energy in the process. Meitner's colleagues, Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann, succeeded where generations of alchemists have failed using a new neutron to transmute uranium atoms into krypton and barium. Inspired by the biological process of cell splitting, Meitner and her colleagues named this process fission, and it became the physical basis of some of the most destructive weapons ever created. Despite her pivotal role in the discovery and her contribution to its name, Meitner was keen to distance herself from the devastating potential of nuclear fission reactions. Perhaps because of this, or perhaps because of the sexism and anti-Semitism she faced throughout her career, Louise Meitner long went uncredited for her work. And it was Otto Hahn, alone, who received the Nobel Prize for the discovery of nuclear fission in 1944. So, in the centuries since science left philosophy behind, our understanding of the fundamental particles of matter itself fundamentally transformed. Unimaginably tiny, apparently unsplittable atomos could in fact be split. Baryons are particles of atomic nuclei, protons, and neutrons. Electrons are another group of particle known as a lepton, which inhabit a different sphere and behave in their own understanding the interaction of these 2 types of matter helps to explain almost everything we experience and underpins all of modern chemistry and biology. But of course, this was not the end. There were still many mysteries in the cosmos that could not be explained by mere interactions of baryons and leptons. Was there more? Were protons, neutrons, and electrons the true fundamental particles? Or was this step turned into another run just as it was before? The real-world explosion that began the atomic age in 1945 left scientists the tools and the motivation to dive further into the world of particle physics, to probe deeper than ever before, and find out. As a writer, James Joyce dreamed of his work surviving him, of being immortalized for centuries to come. Even he could have scarcely imagined the impact his words would have beyond ours, in a scientific discipline that didn't even exist when he first imagined it. His final novel, Finnegan's Wake, was written in such a way as to be almost impenetrable, but nevertheless can be quite following. And in 1964, one of those followers, soon, was American physicist Murray Gell-Mann. Gell-Mann was among many riding the wave of particle physics research that would swell throughout the mid-20th century. New technologies have revealed a multitude of other exotic particles, in addition to everyday protons, neutrons, and electrons. Inhabitants of this new particle zoo included other particles with mass, like pions and kaons. These weighty particles are known collectively as hadrons. So, Gail Mann and colleagues worldwide now faced the same conundrum that had faced Rutherford and Thomson half a century earlier. Now, instead of searching for a factor that distinguished the fundamental atoms of different elements, scientists needed an explanation for why apparently fundamental hadrons were all similar but distinct. Murray Gell-Mann was not alone in trying to solve the problem. While he puzzled away the California Institute of Technology, Russian-born American physicist George Zweig also approached the issue at CERN in Switzerland. Neither knew what the others were, and yet they both ultimately reached the same conclusion. Hadrons must not be the bottom of the rabbit hole. There must be something smaller, some subhadronic particle making them up. Zweig supposed there to be 4 component particles, and called them aces, referring to aces from each suit in a pack of cards. But Gell-Mann's analysis suggested the heavy hadrons were made up of only 3 subhadronic particles. The physicist was in the habit of giving nonsensical names to hypothetical particles, and when talking about his ideas, referred to these subhadronic fragments as quarks, like with pork. But he never considered how such a word might be spelt. It was only later, while perusing Joyce's Finnegan's Wake as a break from the trials of particle physics, that he happened upon the line 3 quarks for Master Mark. The new particle would be spelt Q-U-A-R-K. And it was quarks that sparked the public's imagination. The name stuck. Of course, all this literary wrangling was not until the existence of the quarks could be proven unequivocally. Experience had shown that if you wanted to split an atom into certain particles, then the best way was to smash atoms together and analyze the wreckage. So it followed that to explore the fragments that made up these smaller subatomic particles, the same experimental approach would work, only this time it would take much more energy. In 1968, the Stanford Linear Accelerator Center was just 2 years old, but was already leading the charge in high-energy particle physics. At 3.2 kilometers long, it was the longest straight-line accelerator in the world, buried 9 meters below the flat, gently rolling landscape of the southern San Francisco Bay. Here, electrons would be accelerated to mind-boggling speeds, imbued with energy up to 50 gigaelectron volts, before being smashed into unwitting protons or neutrons. And from the chaotic products of this head-on collision, physicists were able to finally show what Murray Gell-Mann and George Zweig had hypothesized 4 years earlier, that these hadrons were no more indivisible than atoms had been. A proton could be shattered into much smaller point-like particles. Quarks, quarks, or aces, whatever they were called, they were real. The next 30 years of high-energy particle physics saw quarks probed from every possible angle. Experiments and theory combined to determine how many types of quark there were, how they differed from one another, and how they interacted to create larger particles. Now, physicists have identified 6 different types of quark, known as flavors, which are named, somewhat curiously, up, down, strange, charm, top, and bottom. Each of the 6 possess a specific mix of characteristics, including electric charge, mass, spin, and a property known as color, which is entirely unrelated to real color. Instead, quark color helps to understand how hadrons behave in relation to the strong nuclear force that holds atoms together. By combining together in triplets or sometimes groups of 5, different flavors and colors of quark produce a family of particles known as baryons, which include positively charged protons and uncharged neutrons that combine to form atomic nuclei. And so the short-lived lambda, signal design particles, properties of their and they can also pair up to create another breed of composite particle known as a meson. More than half a century has now passed since high-energy physics smashed open the assumption that hadrons were fundamental particles that couldn't be broken down any further. Scientists have since discovered 6 different flavors of quark and worked out all the possible ways they can be assembled to make all kinds of composite particles, however lethal. Of all the energies we can generate in particle accelerators, there is no experimental hint that there is anything more. It seems we have finally reached the bottom of the particle rabbit hole. As far as particles with mass are concerned, quarks are as unsplittable as they get. High-energy collisions have also proved that the other breed of particles, leptons, are similarly indivisible, but they too exist in greater variety than first suspected, and include not only the well-known negatively charged electron, but also the more massive muon and tau lepton, as well as uncharged neutrino versions. So, there are 12 elementary particles that appear to make up everything. 6 quarks and 6 leptons. Their behavior is governed by their fundamental and unalterable properties of mass, charge, spin, and so-called output. But the particle zoo is not quite complete. 12 quarks and leptons may be the particles that lie at the heart of every physical object in the cosmos, but they alone cannot explain the processes in our dynamic universe. Why do the stars ignite? What makes them shine? And why do they even have mass in the first place? February in Chicago is cold. Wind howls through the city streets, blowing inland from the shores of Lake Michigan and piling snow in heaps at street corners. A few straggling scientists holding tightly to scarves and hats wrestle at the door of the conference center and rush happily to the 2009 annual meeting of the American Association for the Advancement of Science is being underway, with presentations in genetics, climate science, and astronomy cramming the daily program. This morning, there is a subtle draw towards a single lecturer. Scientists gravitate from across the center, eager for an update on the hottest race in particle physics, the search for the so-called God particle, a Higgs boson, thought to be responsible for giving many particles mass. This is a true race for the real, facing institutions across the Atlantic. Fermilab's glamorously named Tevatron in Illinois, competing with the brand new Large Hadron Collider, or LHC, constructed by CERN on the border of France and Switzerland. The LHC had been built specifically for this search, at a cost of some €3 billion. But before the race had barely begun, CERN suffered a huge setback. Just a month after the LHC was first switched on, an explosion critically damaged several accelerating magnets in the accelerator. The collider would have to close for more than a year for repairs to take place, giving the Tevatron a clear run for victory. So now, with LHC crippled, Tevatron leading the charge, head scientists from Fermilab took the stage in Chicago to present their progress. Addressing a packed and steaming lecture hall, they revealed that although they've not found the God particle yet, they hoped it wouldn't be long before they could confirm a discovery. The centre had been working hard to increase precision, but the problem was that nobody knew exactly what properties the Higgs boson had, or what energy collision would produce it. Tevatron was best placed for exploring a certain range, between 150 and 180 gigaelectron volts. So if the elusive particle could be produced within those limits, Fermilab stood an excellent chance, pipping the damaged LHC to the post. The search for missing pieces of the standard model had actually begun decades earlier. Throughout the last half of the 20th century, colliders were constructed, smashed particles together, and helped to reveal untold variety of quarks and composite particles. And yet, even then, it was clear that this wasn't the full picture. These particles may have been the stuff of matter, but they spoke nothing of action. Four fundamental forces govern interactions between matter in the modern universe. Gravity, which distorts space-time and sees all objects attracted to one another. Electromagnetism, responsible for electric and magnetic interactions, as well as the communication of radiation across vacuous distances. The strong nuclear force, which holds a tight nucleon together, and the weak nuclear force, which sometimes causes them to split apart. The ways that these forces were communicated between particles of matter came to occupy their own branch of particle physics, as a new breed of force-carrying particles evolved, the gauge boson. These messengers were theoretical at first: the photon for electromagnetism, gluon for the strong force, W and Z bosons for the weak force, and the graviton for gravity. As particles, they could be considered physical manifestations of fields in the same way waves on the surface of the ocean are a reflection of the movements beneath the surface. Whether they were real particles or not is a question for quantum mechanics, but one after the other, experiments did in fact detect most of these bosons, and now they sit alongside quarks and leptons in the standard model of particle physics. Only the graviton eludes us, needing such huge collision energies to produce it that we will never be able to build a particle accelerator quickly. Once they could be seen and studied, it turned out that the different force-carrying bosons had varying properties, just like the fundamental properties of matter. They had different masses and interacted with quarks and leptons in different ways. For example, somewhat surprisingly, the W and Z bosons of the weak force seem to have huge masses, whereas photons have no mass at all. And this question of mass was rapidly becoming a major problem for the hallowed standard model of physics. Lepton mass is minuscule, while all the quarks have more but different amounts. The top quark is around 75,000 times the mass of an up quark. And yet, there is nothing in the mathematics and particle physics that says that these particles should have any mass at all. Despite the fact maths can predict with remarkable accuracy the earliest moments of the cosmos, there is one glaring error. Comes out without mass. And mass, of course, is critically important for the subsequent evolution of the cosmos. Without this, electrons would be unable to bind protons to make hydrogen atoms. Without that hydrogen, there could be no stars, no galaxies, no light in the universe, and no life. The earliest theories for the generation of mass in the universe had been proposed in 1964, around the same time that quarks and aces were first being mooted. Peter Higgs, an English theoretical physicist, along with two other Belgian scholars, Robert Brout and Francois Aubert, arrived at a similar conclusion. They suggested that all particles came into existence near the beginning of the universe, initially with no mass. Soon after, a force field came to permeate the entire universe, and when some particles interacted with it, they somehow gained mass. This force field is known today as the Higgs field, and the only way of proving its existence was to try and find its physical manifestation, the Higgs boson. Physicists knew the Higgs would be hard to find, and Nobel Prize-winning physicist Leon Lederman referred to it as the goddamn particle for that very reason. But it wasn't long before the epitaph found a more media-friendly name, the God particle was born. Of course, calling something a God particle doesn't help to dispel the mystery around an already complicated physical theory. So, in order to bring the reality of the Higgs boson into popular consciousness, the United Kingdom's science minister ran a competition in 1993 for the best analogy to explain the concept. The winner, one David Miller, a physicist at University College London, described it as follows. Imagine a room full of scientists chatting among themselves. Then the professor enters the room and the scientists surround them. The professor interacts strongly with their admiring fans, answering questions and signing autographs. So, the professor's progress is slowed. It is as if they have acquired mass because of the field of fans that surrounds them. Each admirer could be considered a single Higgs boson. When a less famous professor enters the room, they might only attract a smaller crowd and find it easier to move through, as if they are Higgs. While imagining the effects of the Higgs field and Higgs bosons may require some mental gymnastics, actually finding the elusive particle is an even greater challenge. The Higgs boson can be produced from very high energy hadron collisions. Instantly decays into electrons and photons, but physicists didn't know exactly what energy produced them, or what they might decay into, so sifting through the collision debris for one thing that couldn't be explained by the other particles of the standard model was like looking for a needle in a haystack. And so, in the end, despite Fermi-Lab's assertions in Chicago that we could have evidence for Higgs by the end of 2009, no such evidence ever materialized. The Large Hadron Collider fired back up and started its experiments at the end of that year, but Teletron's hopes began to fade. The sprint at the start turned into a grueling marathon, lasting until 2012, with 1,000 billion proton-proton collisions in the 27-kilometer-long accelerator. But on the 4th of July, CERN finally announced their success. Definitive detection from two of the LHC's instruments, both with enough statistical confidence to discern it from the background noise. The Higgs boson and the Higgs field really did exist. Nearly 50 years after they first conceived their theory, Peter Higgs and Francois Henri won the Nobel Prize for the final piece in the standard model puzzle. Higgs boson sits alongside 60 other unique, fundamental elementary particles that make up the standard model. The current model includes not only ordinary matter, but also antimatter with opposite charges but otherwise identical properties, which make up exotic composite particles and annihilate with normal matter on contact. There are 36 different flavors and colors of quark and antiquark, various leptons and anti-leptons, plus the gauge bosons and the singular Higgs. As far as we can tell, the standard model is complete. These 61 particles are enough to explain everything that happens or has ever happened in the history of life.
They have control of Sector
And
Alpha.
using this structure and further advancements in particle physics over the last 50 years, science is finally in a position to zoom out from the unimaginably microscopic to the unfathomably huge. And consider how the tiniest pieces came to build a universe. When physicists try to calculate the number of fundamental particles in the observable universe using known ratios, measured distances, and established masses, the number they arrive at is almost unimaginably huge. Counting only the quarks that make up the protons and neutrons in hydrogen and helium atoms, and the electrons that are associated with those atoms, the count reaches nearly 3 vigintillion. That's a 3 followed by 80 zeros. Yet even with this staggeringly large number of particles, when they are spread across the vast volume of the observable universe, they average out to about 1 quark-sized particle per cubic meter. And it comes no surprise that the majority of space is actually empty space.
They've committed almost all their
Or at
resources.
least, it isn't matter. For all its experimental completeness, the standard model falls a long way short of explaining the makeup of the universe as a whole. Because in reality, only 5% of the stuff in the universe is what we would consider normal matter, the stuff that makes up stars, planets, and human beings. The rest is shrouded in mystery. Dark matter, thought to be responsible for structuring the universe on the largest scales and holding spinning galaxies together, makes up some 25%. It is more than 5 times more abundant than the particles of the standard model, even though we still don't know exactly what it is. And finally, the remaining 70% of the cosmos appears to be dark energy, the mysterious force that seems to be linked to the modern universe's accelerating expansion. If we know little about dark matter, we know even less about dark energy, despite its overwhelming predominance. These vast mysteries may still elude us, but for the matter that we can touch, see and experience, we can reconstruct a history that stretches back to the first fraction of a second after 1 trillionth of a second after the beginning of the universe as we know it, the strong and electromagnetic forces were united into a singular great force, and particles, if they were present at all, would be very different to how we understand them today. There would be no gluons, photons, or W and Z bosons. Perhaps a single type of boson, which would become the progenitor of all other particles to come. As the cosmic temperature drops and exponential inflation takes place, fundamental forces in their boson messengers begin to emerge. But they are still not as we might expect. They are massless, and with temperatures and energy still too high for particle interactions, their distinctive behaviors cannot be realized. It takes a relative eon for this to change. Around 1 trillion second after the Big Bang, while the nascent cosmos is cooled to a mere quadrillion degrees, the Higgs field finally emerges over the volume of space. Bosons, quarks, and leptons interacting with the field at high mass. Some of the expected particle interactions begin to take place. It is still too hot. The particles still have too much energy for quarks to bind together into anything greater, and so exist as a turbulent and well-mixed quark-gluon plasma. The ultimate cosmic synchron is the defects of the universe as we know it. It will take the next 370,000 years for it to congeal into something recognize. The young universe must climb, step by step, back out of the hole that particle physics has excavated. Quarks must assemble into composite hadrons, protons and neutrons must come together to form atomic nuclei, and electrons must bind to those nuclei to form the first uncharged atoms. Atoms combine together into molecules and finally assemble the physical objects of the universe. Everything we see and experience today is just an unimaginable complex shadow of ever smaller particles nestled inside particles. Except it isn't. There is one final layer of reality. It is unrealistic, certain that particles even exist at all. At the smallest possible scales, the kind of scales in which individual quarks, leptons, and bosons exist, quantum mechanics is law and cannot be ignored. At its heart, this theory considers the fundamental units of matter as existing simultaneously as both a particle and a wave. Thanks to quantum uncertainty, it is impossible to pinpoint both the precise position and momentum of particles, meaning that they are at best described by a probability distribution rather than a single point. It is simply not possible to capture a single electron or quark and hold it in your hand, or between minute quantum tweezers, because quantum field theory says it probably isn't there. It is little more than a transient peak in the quantum electrodynamic field, which will all too quickly flit away. From this perspective, The very concept of particles that fill the cosmos is a simplified quantization of expansive, ever-varying fields that are woven through the fabric of space and time. Not just the Higgs field or the electromagnetic field, but also many others, all overlaid and interacting with one another. There are thought to be 24 separate quantum fields that permeate the universe. 12 for the various fundamental forces, including mass, 9 for the quarks, and 3 for the leptons. Like ripples from raindrops in a pond, the peaks and troughs of these independent fields interact and interfere with one another, creating semi-stable patterns and larger peaks, whose effects propagate further than the tiny ripples that make them. These interference patterns come to define the larger composite particles, the protons, atoms, and molecules of our experience. And so, that is the bizarre truth that lurks at the bottom of the rabbit hole. With the universe composed only of interacting fields at its most fundamental level, the tangible matter that we cling to so fervently may in fact be little more than a vigintillion passing ripples of quantum energy.
You don't want to know what's on those servers, but they're vital to
When
American
Indian
operations in
philosophers
this
nearly
region.
3,000
Other
years
Allied
ago
task forces
imagined
are on
that
their
nothing
way.
is real,
You need to coordinate
they
efforts and
couldn't have
secure the
known
targets.
how right
Get ready to move.
they were. You've been watching the entire history of the universe. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment to tell us what you think. We'll see you next time. What do you see? You might imagine a vacuum, a region of the universe drained of all matter and vibration. Go further. Try to think of a true nothing, an absolute nothing. This nothing is not just empty, but devoid of space and time themselves. Given our everyday experiences, this is hard to imagine. But we have often struggled with the concept of nothing. The biblical story of creation tells us that in the beginning, God created the heaven and earth. But what existed before God's creation? A moment before time, in a place before space. The Bible simply does not say. And indeed, our scientific theories and observations also tell us that our universe has not existed for eternity. They tell us that 14 billion years ago, it had a beginning, a fiery birth in a maelstrom of particles and energy. And it has been expanding and cooling ever since. So what cosmologists offer tantalizing possibilities. Maybe our universe was begotten from a previous existence part of an endless cycle, or formed in a violent collision between two other universes. Perhaps the most unsettling answer of all is that our universe was born. And if that is the case, how does one get something? There is no electron, as real as 1 or 2. When electrical magnetic fields are at 0, are the fields still there? These might seem like strange questions to ask, but by the early 20th century, our notion of physical reality had become somewhat fuzzy. The rigid, clockwork universe of Newton had been replaced. Einstein had turned space and time on their heads with his theory of relativity. Experiments showed that the world of the very small was governed by a totally new set of physical laws. In the world of atoms and electrons, physicists spoke not of certainties, but of probabilities. Probabilities governed by grand rules, the mathematics of quantum mechanics. This is not how we see it. Our macroscopic large-scale world is one ruled by certainties, by things, by reason and logic. Nothing is nothing, something is something, and when you put your cup of coffee on the table, it stays there, every time. But the distant world of the very small, the world of quantum strange, in which something can be born out of nothing and matter can pass through matter, has has more of an effect on us than the entire universe. To understand this, we are going to go on a journey across time and space, from the universe's first moments to its far-flung future. We are going to unpack the meaning of quantum mechanics, explore its impact on the cosmos around us, leading us to the biggest question of all. Just where did the universe come from? This video is sponsored by Data, the fun to learn about data.
How much data is there in the entire thing? 7.9
Loads. A lot of the study of cosmology is about being able to process huge quantities of information. And data camp is a great place to start. From beginner to pro, it is a gamified system to get you up to speed with R, Python, machine learning, coding, and lots of other hugely important job skills in a fast-moving world. In fact, there are over 350 courses to try out. One example that I've been playing with has been its course on data visualization with matplotlib. Very handy when dealing with things as big as the universe, and as long as time itself. So, click on the link in the description or pin the comment to check out the first chapter in the Data Camp course for free. Unlock new career opportunities and become a data fluent today.
Now control sector Bravo.
We control more sectors than the enemy, but this battle is far from over.
Werner Heisenberg had a nasty case of hay fever. As a young physicist, he'd been trying to understand the rapidly changing landscape of early 20th century physics. For months, he'd been attempting to piece together a seemingly nonsensical world of matter. He understood that in an atom, electrons orbit a nucleus, but if these orbits were planets orbiting the sun, the atom would collapse in a fraction of a second and simply cease to exist. So what rules governed the motion of electrons? Neutron fell as his mathematics became unwieldy and unruly. And now, the summer hay fever hit. His head was becoming cloudy, his nose stuffy. He decided to escape. Seeking sanctuary on the small island of Heligoland, located in the North Sea, he hoped the fresh, salty air would clear his mind. And it was on tiny, isolated Heligoland, whilst relaxing one evening, that he was hit by a revelation that totally changed our understanding of reality.
Objective lost. Inventory taken.
It all began in 1900, with Max Planck's desperate attempts to explain how hot objects glow. We know that in hot objects, atoms jiggle. And it was this jiggling that produced the rainbow of colours you could see. In classical physics, all possible jiggles were allowed. But to really experiment, Planck added a new, unexpected ingredient.
All the goodness of a balanced meal delivered in one
So energies were present in distinct individual chunks. And in contact with these jiggles, quantum mechanics was born. By the 1920s, this world of the very small lower atoms and electrons became strange.
My family
and
never goes
complex
hungry,
place.
and I
Just
don't.
like energy, the orbits of electrons appear to be quarters too, existing at specific distances from the nucleus. And in 1955, Erwin Schrödinger wrote down his wave equation to explain quantum mechanics. Objects like electrons were no longer in a particular place. Instead, they were fuzzy and spread out, described by something known as a wave function. Heisenberg had been caught up in this swirling, hidden mix of quantum theory. Like others, he was trying to bend well-established rules to explain how electrons orbiting in atoms. Perhaps they were unrelated observations, something Heisenberg needed to calculate. However, like all attempts before, his calculations failed to explain what the experimenters were telling him. In the cool, fresh, sea air of Heligoland, no ideas could be crystallized. He realized that we can never actually observe an electron in its orbit. what we see are the emitted frequencies of light as electrons from one orbit to another. So why bother trying to calculate the details of the orbit? We decided what we should calculate is what we can actually observe in the experiments. Heisenberg began working through the mathematics, ignoring how the electron was precisely moving, and it was then things came into stark clarity. As new mathematics worked. The form of the equations in front of him seemed strange, but a mathematician would have recognized them as matrices, whilst these are common in physics today, they were still a novelty in the 1920s. Heisenberg did not sleep that night, instead sitting off on a tree during the walk. He sat and watched the first rays of the sun peek over the horizon from a rocky outcrop on the island. As the day warmed, he realized he had a new mathematical way of explaining the world at the very small. What a bizarre world he had found. Heisenberg's mathematics tallied with Schrödinger's. They did not talk of where an electron is, only where it might be. And when it came to an electron's speed, the description is equally vague. How an electron jumps from one orbit to the next was unknowable, just the energy emitted when it did so. And it didn't talk about the precise time an electron would make such a quantum jump, just the chances of the jump occurring. The quantum world was not a work of precision. The quantum world was one of probabilities. Staring at his equations, Heisenberg realized that values in position and speed were in fact related. He saw that the more accurately we can discern position, the less certain we are of speed. And if we try to accurately determine speed, the position is fuzzy. Imagine you put an electron in a tiny box. In the classical world, the electron would happily rocket around, bouncing off the walls. If you cool the electron, it would move slower and slower. Eventually, you cool the electron to absolute zero and it would sit at rest, not moving. But Heisenberg's uncertainty principle means that in quantum mechanics, this is strictly forbidden. As we know where the electron is, confined within the walls of the box, there is a fuzzy limit to what we can do with its speed. No matter what we do, quantum physics prevents us from cooling an electron down to absolute zero. Try as we might, there will always be some residual jiggling. On top of this, like position and velocity, energy and time are not precise things in quantum physics. And like position and velocity, how well you can determine one is related to how you determine the other. The energy of things can fluctuate over time, with small quantities appearing and disappearing on tiny timescales and very briefly breaking the law of conservation of energy. This means that even empty space jiggles, the residual energy in the vacuum that is always there. Known as the quantum vacuum, this fills the entire universe as virtual particles frequently out of existence. And so, in the quantum world, empty space is not really empty. Nothing.
JSON JQ6 with groundbreaking depersonalization technology.
Principle is a fundamental law of the universe, and yet it seems disconnected from our large-scale reality. But as we will see on the next stage of our journey, the physics of the very tiny does have big implications for the cosmos, for our very existence,
the JSON JQ6.
the birth.
Set yourself free.
Understand quantum mechanics' role in the universe, we're going to have to think about the sun. For many years of human history, the sun was a god. To the ancient Egyptians, the sun was Ra, king of all gods and father of creation. To the Greeks, he was Helios, who rode his chariot daily across the sky. But what powered the sun? Was it just a flaming ball like the fires on Earth? It wasn't until the mid-1800s that science started to provide answers.
We have secured more sectors than our enemy. Make sure you defend them.
Determined at absolute zero, and after whom the units of temperature remained. And I was considering just how old the sun was. With the physics of the day, Kelvin deduced that our star was an immense ball of hot gas, squeezed to high temperatures by its own gravity, and there was only so much mass in the sun to maintain it. It seems, on the unhinged whole, that the sun has not illuminated the Earth for 100 million years, we're almost certain that he has not done so for 500 million years. As for the future, we may say with equal certainty that the inhabitants of the Earth are not continuing to enjoy the light and heat essential to their life for many millions of years longer, unless sources now unknown to us are prepared in the great storehouse of creation. This estimate dismayed geologists and biologists. It simply left too little time for the weathering of continents or evolution of animals. The real Kelvin did not know about the physics of the nucleus. By the 20th century, physicists had realized that atoms had a definite structure. The negatively charged electrons orbit a nucleus composed of positive protons, neutral neutrons. But the atomic nucleus is tiny, thousands of times smaller than matter itself. So, an immense force must be present to counter the neutral repulsion of protons crammed into the tiny nuclear volume. Unimaginatively, physicists call this the strong force. And if this force would be tapped in nuclear reactions, energy would be unleashed. Soon experimenters were crashing atoms together and outpoured copious energy. Eventually, in 1920, Cambridge astronomer Arthur Ellington put two and two together. He decided the power of stars lay in the nuclei of atoms. Stars, including our sun and namely hydrogen, the simplest element of the cosmos. Throughout the 1930s, physicists realized that starlight must be generated by nuclear.
Dr. Green, what is it, nurse? Apparently some super-duper
hydrogen bound together by a strong force into heavy elements.
Good morning.
But just how did this work?
There
were clearly two forces derived. Firstly, the strong force responsible for binding the nuclei together. But the strong force only acts over very short distances. Two nuclei must essentially touch for the strong force to latch them together. As the nuclei are composed of positively charged protons, they repel through electromagnetism. For the fusion to work in the sun, the nuclei must be thrown together hard enough to overcome the electromagnetic repulsion and for the strong force to grab on. But there is a problem. The core of a star is crushed to incredibly high temperatures by the weight of the star pressing down. Astronomers have calculated a newborn sun would have a central temperature approaching 15 million kelvins. And at this temperature, the collisions between protons, the nuclei of hydrogen, is just too gentle. The electromagnetic repulsion keeps the protons too far apart for fusion. So, how could the sun possibly shine? And this is where the tiny quantum world comes in. Was given by an enigmatic scientist, George Gamow. Born in Odessa when it was part of the Russian Empire, Gamow was a true polymath. His mind roamed from the birth of the universe through radioactivity and into how DNA stored information. But for our story, it is Gamow's insight into quantum mechanics that matters. He realized that we cannot treat colliding nuclei like solid balls of matter. Due to Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, at the quantum level, everything is fuzzy. When two nuclei collide, they are not simply a certain distance apart. They are many distances apart, instantaneously. And somewhere in this fuzzy mix, they might be close enough for the strong force to do its work. Through quantum uncertainty, the two nuclei overcome the barrier of electromagnetic repulsion, allowing them to fuse and release their nuclear energy. This tunneling through such seemingly impenetrable barriers is a feature of the quantum world. And it is this that allows the sun to shine. Following these revelations throughout the 40s and 50s, astronomers steadily uncovered the secret lives of stars, spurred on by the surge in nuclear research throughout the Second World War. They pieced together the complex web of a nuclear burn. Firstly, from simple hydrogen to helium, then helium into beryllium and carbon, It is only in their cores, crushed to immense temperatures and density by their weight, can the extreme conditions needed for this nuclear burn occur. These elements are essential for our existence in the universe, and of course they are useless, locked away, buried to death within stars. It is only at the end of a star's life that elements can be released. And just as the seemingly tiny, microscopically irrelevant world of quantum mechanics gives them light, it can propel these elements into the cosmos in spectacular fashion. The neutrino is a curious particle, with virtually no mass and no charge, and so is invisible to all electric and magnetic fields. It is also blind to the strong force that binds the nuclei of atoms together. In fact, neutrinos only feel the weak force, the strangest of all the fundamental quantum forces. Posited by Wolfgang Pauli in the 1930s, due to their incredible elusiveness, it wouldn't be another 25 years until the neutrinos were finally captured in an experiment. This is because, within quantum weak force interactions, the neutrino simply ignores most matter. It will happily travel through a light layer of lead before there is a chance of interacting with a single atom. And yet, they play a crucial role in supernova, the death of massive stars. In the immense crush of a collapsing giant star, electrons are forced into protons, and this radioactive decay splits up neutrinos. Huge numbers of neutrinos try to escape the star, but finding themselves in a superdense environment, they slide into the inferior layers. By sheer numbers, they reverse the currents, hit the star, out, spewing the diverse elements back to the cosmos. Clearly, quantum physics is written into the operation of the universe. Through its role in generating solar heat or recycling elements across the cosmos, it is essential for our existence. But it doesn't stop there. Quantum physics play an even larger role. Do we only need to think about the quantum nature of the extremely tiny? Or is there a bigger question we should be asking? Is the entire universe a quantum object? In quantum physics, the wave function encapsulates all the information of an object. But two individual objects are not described by two individual wave functions. Instead, we use a single wave function to encompass both. In fact, in quantum theory, we can use a single wave function to describe any number of particles. This raises a huge question, one of the biggest possible. Could we write down a single wave function to account for the quantum state of the entire universe? A wave function to account for every particle of matter and photon of light? It would be truly immense, but at the very least, theoretically possible. Consider the world of classical physics. We originally could know the precise location and speed of every particle and photon at a particular instant. Impractical, possible in theory. With this information, we use the rules of physics to calculate where every particle will be in the future. This is because classical physics is deterministic, and with it, the universe ticks like clockwork. The future is completely written into the fabric of today.
They're losing this battle.
Quantum
Hold your
physics,
territory.
on the other hand, is built upon probabilities. Knowing the wave function today will tell you the wave function tomorrow, but not a single definite tomorrow. A whole host of possible tomorrows. Which of these follows the true future path of the universe? Physicists are unsure. And in the 1950s, Hugh Everett III proposed a radical solution. In his many worlds viewpoint, he decided that there is no single future for the universe. Out there in this multiverse of universes, there are other versions of you. In some universes you may have won a lottery, in others you may be a rock star or a famous actor. And of course, in some, you are absolutely identical. Everett's ideas were too radical for the time, and unappreciated, he eventually left science. But the notion of a wave function for the entire universe did not even Even Stephen Hawking pondered whether a quantum universe could solve one of the great mysteries, namely whether the universe had a beginning. Working with Jim Hartle, he deduced that in the early universe, the quantum nature of time was indistinct. This, time only really came into existence when the universe became really distinct. A singularity that dogged classical cosmology, written in relativity, just didn't occur, because there was no real time, and it couldn't. As you can imagine, not everyone is happy with this picture, and debate continues to rage. And indeed, that is far from the only way quantum physics has been implicated in the beginning of our universe. To find out more, we must travel back in time, back to the first trillion for the second of existence. In the 1970s, physicist Alan Guth
Our troops have secured more sectors than the
had
hostile.
something he needed to hide. Magnetic molecules. They are magnetic equivalent electric charges. And like electric charges, which can be positive or negative, these monopoles would be purely north or south. This should strike you as strange. Every magnet you played with at school always had both a north and a south. You never get just a north or just a south. So why was Guth thinking about it? And why did he need to hide it? Guth was and is a cosmologist and was thinking about the very early universe. In its super-hot, super-dense state, many physicists thought that the rules of physics should be simple. Instead of having four distinct fundamental forces, theory suggested that there was one superforce. As the universe cooled and expanded, the superforce fractured into the current forces. Within this superforce, there should be no distinction between electricity and magnetism. With electric charges, there should also be magnetic monopoles. But whilst there is copious electric charge in the universe, there appear to be no monopoles. If this superforce picture is correct, these magnetic monopoles needed to be hidden. And it was 1981 when Guth hit upon an intriguing solution. The universe underwent a rapid burst of expansion when it was very young. This rapid inflation of the universe would dilute the number of monopoles, and with perhaps one monopole in the entire observable universe, looking at his equations, Guth saw that this inflation could explain some other features of the universe. Firstly, why it appears to be so small. When we look at the universe on large scales, millions to billions of light years, it appears to be the same everywhere. Why should this be the case? Just through random fluctuations, some regions should be more dense, others less. Guth realized that his inflation blew up a tiny chunk of space to the size of the universe around us. And as this tiny chunk was so small, it would have been quite smooth. And its smoothness gives us the smoothness of the heavens. And this, again, is where the quantum world raises its head. This initial chunk of smooth space would still have hosted a quantum vacuum. Within it, Heisenberg's uncertainty would still have brought energy and matter in and out of existence. And when the universe inflated, these minuscule fluctuations would be frozen into space. As inflation ends, its energy is dumped back into the universe as matter and radiation, and the frozen quantum fluctuations would result in slightly more matter in one place than another. These differences were tiny, less than 1 part in a billion, but as the fires of the cosmic birth dimmed, gravity started to play its part. Tiny overdensities began to draw in matter from their surroundings. Clumps of matter and gas began to pool until a few 100 million years after the Big Bang, they were dense enough to form the first stars. Quantum fluctuations frozen into the universe at inflation became the seeds of galaxies today. And we still see them in all their glory, written into the ancient light of the cosmic microwave background. In this theory, the quantum world has shaped our cosmos. But there is one step further back to go.
Sector Bravo secure.
Could we use quantum mechanics to confront the ultimate question of where our universe actually came from? The year is 1973, and young physicist Edward Tryon is watching a lecture by Dennis Sciama, considered one of the fathers of modern cosmology. There is a pause in the lecture, and suddenly, without prompt, Edward hears himself speaking. Maybe the universe is a vacuum fluctuation. There is a murmur of laughter in the room, and Sciama continues his lecture. But Tryon, and in December 1973, he published a paper with almost that exact title: Is the Universe a Vacuum Fluctuation? Tryon was trying to unpack the bizarre implications of the quantum vacuum, how the energy in a vacuum can fluctuate over time, very briefly breaking the law of conservation of energy. And it was this that led him to wonder what the total energy content of the universe was. Clearly, all the mass in motion would be an immense quantity of energy, but there is also the potential in gravitation and other fields, and this potential energy is negative. So, he thought, if you sum up all the energy in the universe, perhaps they balance, and perhaps the total is zero. Staring at Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, Tryon realized a fluctuation of zero energy could last forever. Perhaps the entire universe was just a quantum fluctuation. Of course, this raises the immediate question of where did this fluctuation occur, which would just leave us back at the start. Where did the quantum fields come from? What came before them? We now know, in our quantum universe, it is possible to draw something from nothing. But what could happen inside a true nothing, outside of time and space, still remains a question beyond the borders of science. Despite this, though we can't speak with certainty of what happened before, it is clear that within the first tiny moments of existence, quantum mechanics inevitably played a role. But what about the very end of time? Could the distant, unimaginably vaster universe too be shaped by the quantum? When the universe was young and energetic, it made stars in abundance. Half the stars that will ever exist were created in the first few billion years. Over the last 9 billion years, almost all the remainder were created, and as the universe ages, its ability to create stars is rapidly diminishing. In the future, only the final 5% of stars will be born. But as we have seen, stars don't live forever. Massive stars live for millions of years. Stars like the Sun can last for billions. In time, only the puniest of stars, feeling red dwarfs, will exist. These tiny stars burn through their nuclear fuel extremely smoothly. They can live for tens of trillions of years. But eventually, even their nuclear fires are extinguished and they die. All that will exist will be a dark husk, slowly losing its heat into the dying cosmos. Of course, the forces still operate and gravity will continue to squeeze and squeeze. And without the steady flow of nuclear energy, you might expect that gravity would crush the dead star out of existence. But something stops this seemingly inevitable collapse. And again, Heisenberg's uncertainty principle is the source. As the star cools and loses its energy, in its heart, gravity squeezes electrons and protons closer together. For any individual electron, the room in which it can jiggle about gets smaller and smaller. In terms of quantum physics, the electron is being constrained to a tiny volume. And this means our knowledge of the electron's speed becomes larger and larger. Even at a temperature of absolute zero, quantum mechanics ensures the electrons keep jiggling, meaning the electrons now have a quantum pressure, known as degeneracy pressure, that holds the gravitational collapse. And so the dead stars sit there in the darkness for eternity. On immense timescales, the question arises about the very stability of matter. Whilst protons seem eternal, there are hints that they are not. Some scientists think that other undetected forces might exist, hidden in the universe. On timescales of 10 to the power of 36 years, their presence could become apparent. The action of these forces could cause protons to disintegrate into simpler particles. And so finally, the matter in dead stars would simply melt into darkness.
Insane.
Once they are gone, only black holes remain. On the face of it, being just distortions in time and space, these might seem impervious. Quantum physics ensures their time is also limited. The culprit again is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, in particular the fluctuation of energy in apparently empty space. It was Stephen Hawking who first realized that the quantum vacuum spelled doom for black holes. The mathematics of the quantum vacuum is quite complex. It can be envisaged as fluctuations in the quantum fields of all particles and antiparticles together. One particularly strange aspect is that whilst the waves of particles are moving forwards in time, the waves of their antiparticles are moving backwards. In a random chunk of vacuum, these waves almost cancel. But near a black hole is not a random chunk of vacuum. Its presence, where you can fall in, but it is impossible to escape, firmly separates the past and future. And this disrupts the state of the quantum waves in the vacuum. Some of the fluctuating fields are no longer cancelled. With this, the virtual particles become real particles, tapping into the energy of the black hole. As the particles flow away, the black hole steadily evaporates. It is here we seem to reach the end of our cosmic journey. But is there more to tell? In 1958, physics was a buzz. Rumors were swirling about a theory of everything. This theory would unite quantum physics with Einstein's gravity under a single mathematical umbrella. Physicists had known for decades that the language of curved space-time and the probabilities of quantum mechanics were simply incompatible. A theory of everything could open new doors to the universe. The proposers of this theory, Heisenberg and Pauli, were giants of quantum physics. They were now part of the old guard rather than the young men who had discovered neutrinos and created the principle of uncertainty. But maybe, just maybe, together they had seen through the mathematical fog and cracked the problem. Pauli was invited to speak on this new theory at Columbia University. A group of physicists travelled from Princeton to hear the great man explain his ideas. But as the lecture unfolded, everyone in the room realized it was a lost cause. The idea that all particles are actually different guises of a single, truly fundamental particle could not be correct. Freeman Dyson said, "It was like watching the death of a noble man." Indeed, many great physicists have been obsessed by a theory of everything. Einstein was excited when Theodore Kaluza added electromagnetism to his general theory of relativity. The excitement waned as it was realized that including quantum mechanics was fraught. Nevertheless, Einstein didn't give up, with multiple attempts to derive a theory of everything before his death in 1955. Of his attempts, he wrote, most of my intellectual offspring end up very young in the graveyard of disappointed hopes. This search continues today, and strangely, it is frustrated by scientific success. Einstein's general relativity remains the most accurate description of gravity. Your GPS is testament to this. And for the other forces, the strong, weak, and electromagnetism, quantum physics is all that is required. This, too, is an amazingly successful theory. Within its modern form, known as quantum field theory, quarks are ripples in the quark field, photons are ripples in the photon field, and electrons are ripples in the electron field. The mathematics of quantum field theory accurately tells us the probabilities of how particles interact, and what is precisely seen in the particles spewed from the collisions of the Large Hadron Collider. But fundamentally, the mathematics of relativity and quantum mechanics are simply incompatible. In their current form, they refuse to work together. A new theory with new mathematics is essential. Physicists have therefore found themselves in a theoretical playground without experimental clues to guide them, which has, of course, led to an explosion of ideas. Perhaps the world is ultimately made of strings whose vibrations dictate that they are quarks or electrons. Perhaps loop quantum gravity is correct, with the universe knitting itself with threads of space and time. Perhaps we are fundamentally membranes floating in an 11-dimensional sea. Or perhaps none of these is the true path to enlightenment. Our century-old search for the theory continues, and we have no idea when it will end. But let's pretend. Let's imagine that we have our theory of everything, gravity and quantum physics written in a single language. What secrets of the universe would it reveal? The first place we will look is into black holes. With only general relativity, all the mass in a black hole is squeezed into a single point of infinite density, and infinities really have no place in physical theories. The hope is that within the theory of everything, this infinity never occurs, prevented by the action of the quantum. And there is another infinity that dogs Einstein's relativity. The infinity at the birth of the universe. At the moment of creation, the cosmic density was infinite, and it is this infinity that stops us from appearing before the Big Bang. It stops us from knowing where our universe ultimately came from. It stops us from knowing what came before. Hopefully, the theory of everything will open this locked door. Perhaps it will reveal that we were born from a previous incarnation, a universe before our own. Perhaps we will find that we are lost in the multiverse, just one universe of countless others. Or perhaps we will pry open the door to find ourselves staring into an abyss, an aberration born from a random fluctuation. Our existence, little more than a quantum dream against a backdrop of unending nothingness.
Let's begin, please.
You've been watching the entire history of the universe. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment to tell us what you think. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. In the early 1990s, two teams of astronomers had set out to measure just what the universe was made of. These two teams, known as the High-Z Supernova Search Team and the Supernova Cosmology Project, brought together astronomers from around the globe with the goal of charting cosmic expansion over the life of the universe. The astronomers expected the presence of all the matter and radiation in the universe to act like a drag on the expansion, steadily slowing it as the cosmos aged. By measuring this deceleration, all the matter and energy that make up the universe would be revealed. These international collaborations called on the world's mightiest telescopes, such as the 8-meter Keck telescope in Hawaii and orbiting Hubble Space Telescope, to scour the sky. Their target was supernovae, acting as beacons of the distant cosmos, whose brightness as measured through our telescopes revealed how the universe had expanded as their light travelled for billions of years. but the astronomers were in for a shock. Our universe is not slowing down. It is speeding up. After repeatedly searching for flaws in their observations and checking their calculations, they presented their conclusions to a startled world. And to account for this accelerated expansion, there was something else in the universe, something unexpected, driving the cosmos faster and faster. And whilst there must be immense quantities of this stuff for the effect to take place, it remained and remains totally invisible to our telescopes. Whatever is out there between the stars and galaxies accelerating expansion, it is truly dark. This result netted the leaders of the experiment, Brian Schmidt, Saul Perlmutter, and Adam Rees, 2011 Nobel Prize in Physics. And this discovery of dark energy came at the end of a tumultuous century. Astronomers had discovered that our Sun was an ordinary star in an ordinary galaxy, nowhere in particular in an expanding universe. The more shocking was the revelation that, in terms of matter, all the atoms in all the stars in all the galaxies are little more than cosmic particles. All the matter we can see appeared to be dwarfed by huge quantities of unseen matter, revealed only by its gravitational pull. And as 1998, we realized that even this dark matter was significantly outweighed by the presence of the newly discovered dark energy. Two vast components of the cosmos, unseen and for millennia undetectable. It is currently the biggest question in cosmology. What are these new components of our universe? How do they work? Where do they come from?
American forces are in control of Charlie sector.
This video is sponsored by Magellan TV. Question: out of 100 billion planets in the Milky Way, how many could have ingredients for life? 7? 3 million? That's right, excluding Earth, only about 300 million. And so, my recommendation for Magellan's new documentaries released this week is Other Earths, A Search for Habitable Planets, an exclusive new documentary that dives into the world of exoplanets. It's a great watch and really opened my eyes to how we practice just right for life to exist, let alone thrive. Magellan TV are strong networks for documentaries of more than 1,000 to choose from on a wide range of topics. This Christmas, History Week Plus can take advantage of a special holiday offer. Buy one, get one free gift cards for an annual membership by clicking on the link in the description. Total eclipse of the sun passed over Iceland. Two expeditions headed by British astronomers Arthur Eddington and Frank Dyson set off to observe this phenomenon. One team headed to Brazil, the other to West Africa. The expeditions were beset by problems, from faulty instruments to weather that refused to cooperate. On the island of Principe, off the coast of Africa, the eclipse was due at 2 in the afternoon. Throughout the morning, Eddington had sat in the pouring rain, the sun not peeking from behind the globe until half an hour before the eclipse. Clouds continued to cross the sky even as it darkened. Eddington busied himself changing photographic plates on the telescope, only glancing momentarily at one of nature's most spectacular sights. The observation, the lost cause. All this effort, wasted time.
What's our situation? Early operations are promising.
A few days later, Eddington had his answer. Now a picture of the universe changed forever. Headline in the New York Times proclaimed lights all askew in the heavens, and the little-known Albert Einstein became the most famous scientist in the world. 4 years earlier, during the turbulent years of the First World War, Einstein had published his general theory of relativity. The culmination of a decade's hard work, relativity gave us a new picture of gravity, replacing Newton's forces with malleable space-time. During the war years, relativity was an academic curiosity. With peace restored, scientists had set out to test the predictions of this new scientific theory. Their goal had been to measure the locations of background stars whose light passed close to the edge of the sun, stars that would be visible when the immense glare of the sun is dimmed during an eclipse. If Einstein was correct, the gravity of the sun should act like a lens, gently deflecting the starlight in its straight path. The photographic plates obtained in Brazil and Africa, the stars had shifted by the light of the night. Einstein's theory had triumphed.
Look right!
Whilst the result, making a star, Einstein thought that this gravitational lensing had little practical consequence. Stars were simply not massive enough to use as natural telescopes to magnify the distant universe. Nothing could be. There was nothing in the universe with enough mass to have such an effect. Or at least, as far as he knew. In the 1930s, astronomer Fritz Zwicky was working at the California Institute of Technology. Zwicky was a brilliant scientist with a cricket personality. Combining geometry and profanity, he referred to his enemies as spherical bastards, implying they were a bastard no matter which way you looked at them. But as an original thinker, Zwicky's mind roamed through the mysteries of the universe. He coined the word supernova to describe immense stellar explosions, and realized a superdense remnant known as a neutron star would be left in the ashes. And in 1933, Fritz Zwicky was focusing on the Coma cluster. Located 300 million light-years away, Coma is immense and home to thousands of individual galaxies. This was barely a decade after the realization that the Milky Way was not a lonely universe, and numerous other galaxies exist, scattered throughout the cosmos. Zwicky reasoned that the individual galaxies in Coma were held in their orbits by the gravitational pull of all other galaxies around it. He realized that by measuring the galactic speeds, he could determine just how much mass was in the Coma cluster, providing a new way of weighing the galaxies. Instead, all Zwicky found was a big problem. The galaxies in the Coma cluster were moving far too fast. With only the gravitational effect of the galaxies in play, each galaxy in Coma should have been traveling sedately through its orbit. With immense speeds orders of 1,000 kilometers per second, Coma should have been tipping itself apart. It was clear that significantly more gravity was needed to hold Coma together. What was the source of this extra gravity? With nothing obvious, Zwicky concluded that there must be dunkel materie, dark matter, gravitationally binding the Coma cluster. And there had to be a lot more dark matter than the stars can see. Zwicky's realization that much of the mass in the universe is dark was startling. Questions immediately sprung to mind. How much is there? Where is it made from? And how can we measure it? Zwicky's discovery should have set the astronomy world on fire. Instead, there was silence. Possibly because of his brusque style, this notion of dark matter lay buried in the pages of scientific journals. For the next few decades, astronomers had a new focus, measuring the expansion speed of the universe. By the 1970s, there were new technological advances, large telescopes and sensitive instruments for observing the heavens. With these, a new generation of astronomers was asking new questions about the universe. For their reading, the Vehicles with collaborator Kent Ford really wanted to understand how these galaxies spin. She had entered astronomy when it was essentially a non-common activity. She encountered resistance throughout her career, including a lack of female pythons in the telescopes she used. But this didn't stop her, as she undertook meticulous observations of the rotation speeds of spiral galaxies. The expectation was that these galaxies were like the solar system, with most of the mass concentrated towards the center. Just like the planets, the speeds of stars in the spiral disk were expected to fall as gravity gets weaker towards the edge. Ahead of us! This was not what she found. The rotation speed of stars did not diminish, but remained roughly the same all the way to the edge of the galaxies. Just like Zwicky, Ruben was left with a gravitational laser. What was the source of gravity needed to keep the stars moving at their unexpected speeds? Zwicky's dark matter was back at the spotlight. It was becoming clear that what we could see with our telescopes, the myriads of stars and clouds of gas, nothing but minor cosmic rays. Astronomers were faced with a stark question. Is there an entire shadow universe of dark matter out there? The evidence was growing, and it was now they turned to Einstein's seemingly inconsequential theoretical prediction made more than half a century before. They turned to gravitational lensing. Indeed, Zwicky had suspected this also years before. He had reasoned that with the extra dark matter, galaxies and clusters of galaxies would be powerful gravitational lenses. But it took until the 1960s for scientists to really come to grips with this concept and find a point of energy staggeringly huge enough to properly observe. Quasars. Appearing as little more than points of light through the most powerful telescopes, they shine with the brightness of more than 100 trillion stars. It was realized that quasars were powered by supermassive black holes. The gravitational pull of these black holes accelerates in-falling material to close to light speed. As it swirls into the inner regions, matter crashes together, heating it to immense temperatures. And it is this accreting disk of matter that glows so brightly. With this immense brightness, astronomers could spot quasars at incredible distances, many billions of light years from Earth. By the 1970s, with their observational approaches honed, finding quasars was routine. Then, in 1979, one quasar, uninspiringly labelled Q0957 plus 561, provided a puzzle. Astronomers realized that this appeared to be two quasars very close to each other in the sky. This is not too unusual, but it was found that these two quasars appeared to be identical. Astronomers realized that they were seeing double a gravitational mirage. Between us and the quasar sits a massive galaxy. Its gravity distorts our view, producing two secret images of the single object. Zwicky was right again, and more than 80 years since it was first observed under the clear skies of Africa and Brazil, gravitational lensing had found its purpose. In the decades that followed, thousands of gravitational lenses have been discovered. Many of these are due to individual galaxies, spectacular, produced by the immense gravity of gravity clusters. Distant galaxies that would be too faint to see in our telescopes are magnified by these cluster lenses, appearing as immense arcs. Every instance of gravitational lensing provides an opportunity to measure how much mass is present by measuring the distortion. And the conclusion is always the same. There is a lot more mass than that visible as stars and gas. In fact, most of the matter in our universe is completely dark. But it wasn't just gravitational lenses that revealed the ubiquitous presence of dark matter. everywhere astronomers looked, dark matter was needed to explain their observations. From immense flows of galaxies through the universe to the presence of gas in galaxy clusters that had been gravitationally squeezed by dark matter was everywhere and dominated the gravitational poles of the cosmos. Finally, we came to realize that it had shaped our universe. Looking up at the night sky, the black is filled with stars. Some have been patterns. For millennia, humanity has interpreted shapes from these arrangements, creating meaning from their placement. From the ancient Egyptians to the Inca, these constellations have captured our imaginations. But behind these simple patterns lurk complex, incomprehensibly clusters. Many billions of light years away, many billions of light years across, with many billions of stars and galaxies within them. The Great Wall, the Giant Arc, and indeed, where we live, Laniakea. And so, it was in the 1970s that astronomers started to chart the locations of galaxies. They began to create an atlas of the universe. The idea was simple. Measurement of cosmic speed due to the expansion of the universe reveals a galaxy's distance. What this meant, collecting and analyzing the light from many individual galaxies, a laborious task. Dedicated programs were established to measure galaxy light, with one of the first being the CFA Redshift Survey, based at Harvard's University Center for Astrophysics. And, as measurements were gathered, the structure of the universe was revealed. It was clear galaxies were part of a cosmic web, with individual clusters linked with filaments. Embedded in this structure were huge empty regions, known as voids, giving the universe a sponge-like appearance. By the mid-1990s, two astronomers, John Hooper and Margaret Geller, had analysed the light of 18,000 galaxies. They labelled immense structures, such as the Great Wall and the Stigma, each composed of thousands. Modern surveys of galaxies, including the 2DF Galaxy Redshift Survey and Sloan Digital Sky Survey, have mapped more than 1 million, revealing clusters, filaments, and voids throughout the universe. But this raised a question. Where did all this cosmic structure come from? Astronomers knew that the fiery birth of the universe and the Big Bang left it featureless. The hydrogen and helium forged in the first few minutes was smoothly spread through the cosmos. But underlying this was dark matter. For in the time before the first stars in the cosmos was truly dark, dark matter was starting to stir. In the beginning, the matter in the universe wasn't perfectly smooth. A burst of expansion, known as inflation, in the earliest moments had written very slight ripples in the universe. Some places in the early universe were slightly more dense than others. Other places were less dense. And even though these density differences were tiny, they were enough for gravity to do its work. And this gravity from very slight overdensities started pulling material in. Matter began to flow, and hydrogen and helium gas came along for the ride. After 100 million years, densities grew and gas cooled. Chunks of hydrogen and helium fragmented out of the clouds. From this cooling and collapsing gas, the first stars were born. And in the universe, again, there was light. Burning in the dense knots of dark matter, these infant stars lit up the sites of the first galaxies. Over the billions of years that followed, dark matter drew in more mass, with growing quantities of dark matter accompanied by more stars and gas. And so, 14 billion years after the birth of the universe, these fully formed galaxies sit at the hearts of immense halos of dark